Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 121. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good. Same old. I'm actually getting ready to start planning my journey back to Los Angeles, so I can get all my stuff and figure.
So you are leaving New York back to the West Coast, but only to retrieve your belongings, and then you are going back.
Yeah, presumably I'll stay there for a little bit. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff I need to take care of back in LA because this was all very spur of the moment, and I'm not usually a spur of the moment kind of person. So got to get some stuff taken care of, but just getting ready to do that, and get ready do that, dude. Like flying just stresses me out so much. I'm like really not looking forward to it at all, especially like now. For obvious reasons. Yeah,
I don't look forward to it either. And I used to be on airplanes all the time. And I thought about it a few weeks ago. I haven't been on an airplane all year, which is crazy. I mean, I can't believe that. So I've lucked out in 2020, the year of COVID, but we wish you the very best. I didn't ask, what is your, because I didn't ask you this, but what is your inspiration for moving there? Are you doing this for a woman?
It's a couple different things. I think that's definitely part of it, but I also think I feel like New York, I'm just in a better mindset in general.
Sure.
It's just more my speed. I prefer the weather. I prefer the closeness of family and the distance of family at the same time. Like I don't have to see everybody, but I know that I can, like if I want to. I still have some friends here. There's like a myriad of reasons that I want to come back.
Okay. I'm just trying to. I want to build a picture in my mind.
Yeah.
Of what we have a father-son relationship like we've established, and I want to know what's going on in my young son's life. He's so tiny and he's traveling by himself, and
I know
I'm nervous for you. Not because you can't handle it, but because you're my son.
Right, of course. And you're always nervous for your son, I presume.
Yeah. I'm telling you right now, that's just the way it is. Fatherhood, man. I'll tell you what. It's crazy. Welcome one and welcome all to our PlayStation podcast, Sacred Symbols, which goes up each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free by supporting us on Patreon. Like nearly 10,000 of you do. We're falling back down below the 10,000 mark, which I'm not pleased about, but that's probably about 10,000 too high. So yeah. I'm not going to complain about it too much, but come join us over on Patreon, patreon.com/colinslaststand for that early ad-free access, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show. By the way, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Thank God for the right-click correct thing on, on like Microsoft Word or Google Docs or whatever to bring in, because it only that can make sense of some of the illiterate ramblings that people are writing into this show. I just wanted to let everyone know. I appreciate everyone writing into us. We always like to include as many people as we can into our show. So thank you so much for that. And of course, Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our Patreon exclusive episode of the show we do each and every week only for patrons. Last week, we actually did a really fun State of the Show episode where we talked about some things we were thinking about in terms of, structure and everything else. And we got a lot of good feedback, and we were able to talk things out and talk about things we can improve upon and things maybe we do too well, perhaps.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, this podcast is too good. And there are some ways that I think you need to reel it back in. So we appreciated all that.
Yeah, you have to worsen the quality of the show to keep in line.
Right. You don't want to stand out too much and become too much of a beacon. So we understand that, but there'll be a few of those pieces of feedback instilled in this very episode. One piece of feedback we did get that I was considering that I'm not going to go forward on, though, is I was thinking about publishing the show 6 hours earlier for patrons than I do right now. But I'm not going to do that. And today's episode is a great example of why. I really held up today's episode a great deal. Today's been kind of screwed up on my end. So it's not going to be something Dustin will even be able to finish editing until after 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So we would have already screwed it up. I would have literally immediately screwed that up. So.
Instantaneous.
So thank you for your patience on that. But other feedback, including feedback on the drop, which we'll talk about later when we get to that section of the show. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope everyone is doing well. We anticipate PlayStation 5. It is near.
Yeah, it's
nearer
nearing.
than ever. Yeah.
It's getting close.
It is. Not too close.
Yeah.
Don't get too close. We don't want you to get too close, but it's close enough and it's exciting. But last week, Chris, we left our show. We had Dustin on the show last week and we were talking about this random PR offer we got from Gearbox about Godfall. I wanted to open the show with this. Kind of a full circle thing, if you will. The end of last show and the beginning of this show. We can tether them together. What we basically said was that an old friend of mine that works at Gearbox, who does PR and marketing over there now, reached out about Godfall, asked for my home address to send us some sort of package, and we'll get PC codes. We're not going to have PS5 access until the day the console comes out. So nonetheless, free copies of the game, whatever comes along with that. And we were talking about it. It kind of sits outside of our usual purview of not dealing with PR. We actively don't talk to Sony. We don't reach out to developers and publishers anymore. And I wanted to know how everyone felt about this. We got a lot of feedback about this, actually. And Braden Summers wraps it all up, basically the synopsis of what everyone else said, which is, hey guys, Colin, you're always telling us to exercise our rights as consumers. So I would like to see you take up Gearbox's offer for Godfall. I'm not quite sold on the game just yet. And since you and Chris provide well-thought opinions, I would like to hear them for this game. I also understand it is your choice. So I will respect however you decide to go about this. Well, I've done so. Chris, I've reached back out to Gearbox. And so it's in motion. Maybe we'll get the game and play it and let everyone know.
Yeah,
Thank
why
you
not?
for your kind feedback. Yeah.
I don't even think it necessarily breaks our rule, because I think our rule was that we wouldn't initiate and we wouldn't ask PR for handouts or anything. Like, we wouldn't be the people who were just like in emails like begging for like scraps of promotional material. But if if people reach out to us, like, why not? We've already like, people have sent us codes for indie games, and we've played them, so
that's very true.
Why not?
But we've been talking about it more recently, and so I wanted to make sure that we're on the up and up with the audience. Oh, and by the way, I totally forgot to write this down in my notes, but I need to say this, and I totally didn't think about this conflict of interest until after the fact, and that's because I'm stupid, because it's such an obvious conflict of interest. But I bought some Microsoft stock the other day, just because I was like, it's kind of low. It's not that low, but I was like, I just kind of want to buy. And I've always wanted to have Microsoft in my modest portfolio. So I bought double-digit shares. It's nothing crazy. But I've created a conflict of interest now for myself, I guess. So anything I say, I'm going to try to control Microsoft's stock price with this podcast. And the higher it goes, the better. So everyone go out and buy yourself an Xbox Series X. But I just wanted to call that out, because I do like to be on the up and up. I really didn't think about it until it was too late, but it's no big deal. But I wanted to bring that up and let everyone know, just so there's no unknown conflict. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
By the way, Chris, I was looking at your Twitter feed.
Oh, yeah?
Because I was late getting to the show, and then you had a problem with your router. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go stalk Chris for a little while, as I sometimes do. And I saw that you responded to this tweet from this guy named Alex Hutchinson, who's the creative director at Google Stadia. This is a weird tweet, isn't it? Yeah, he tweeted out, streamers worried about getting their content pulled because they used music they didn't pay for should be more worried by the fact that they're streaming games they didn't pay for as well. It's all gone as soon as publishers decide to enforce it. The real truth is the streamers should be paying the developers and publishers of the games they stream. They should be buying a license like any real business and paying for the content they use. It's kind of, it has nothing to do with our show, but I just thought that was really, I had such a hectic day that I totally forgot about this tweet.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow back up on it. It is weird. It is weird. And your response is right. You say it is tone deaf from the guy at Stadia that's all about ubiquity in gaming.
It's not something that somebody at the head of what many would consider a fledgling initiative should be tweeting about the industry that they're trying to break into. I just like, he's not incorrect in a way. Like, I understand what he's saying. Like, obviously, you know, streaming video game content is technically something that is not really in keeping with traditional licensing laws, and it's not necessarily something that, you know, under like a really strict system would be allowed. But the reason it's persisted for as long as it has with so little enforcement is because it's proved both to streamers and publishers of these video games to be beneficial for both parties. And I think the second something like that happens in any industry, it's just sort of this kind of unwritten rule where it's like, yeah, you're technically not allowed to do this, but it's fine. It's kind of like taping an episode of television on a VHS back in like the 90s. It's like, you technically weren't supposed to do that, but like everybody did it because it's kind of fine, you know? So it's just weird for like, it's a weird thing to go out of your way to say, given his position at, you know, the company that he is, you know, employed at. It's just a very strange thing to say for no reason, like completely unprovoked.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway too, was why are you saying this? Sometimes because I'm like, oh, it's an interesting argument. I would be interested to hear that argument and flesh it out. But we all make the same mistakes on Twitter, but it's never possible to flesh out an argument like this. And obviously you're just going to get, you know, attacked by people who don't want to hear the nuance of the argument, whether it's there or not. And I think you're right in terms of the fact that in some way being able to tape TV, and I remember when TiVo came out, it was a huge deal because it was this idea of digitally recording your TV. I mean, I remember a couple of my friends having it, and it was like this, it was incredible. Actually, at the time, I was like, this is unbelievable. You can fast forward through commercials and record all this shit you want. And I would imagine that was somewhat of a requirement ultimately to have TV survive the way it was. And so it became kind of baked in the cable boxes, etc. And so I feel the same way about games now. You don't want to necessarily get caught up into the red tape, because somewhere outside of the red tape is the happy medium where you want to have a healthy ecosystem that supports each other, because the games wouldn't exist without the people who play them and stream them and promote them and do Let's Plays, and they wouldn't therefore have anything to play without those games. And so it's a circuitous and mutually beneficial relationship.
No, there's plenty of games that I think purely exploded almost purely because of their streaming presence. I think the most recent thing, obviously, like, and I tweeted this too, was like, I don't think you could really market Among Us really all that well at all if you didn't have people streaming it, because it's a game whose gameplay is very standard. It's very basic. It's not very like stand out. It's the whole reason that game exploded is because of the way that it makes people interact with each other, like with their voices and like their actual, like, you can't make a commercial for that really. Like the best showcase for a game like that is streaming. And that's like how I heard about it. That's how I started playing it. That's how like all of my friends started playing it. It's like, that's a viral game right now that it was around for a long while that didn't explode until it hit, you know, Twitch and shit. And it's like, I feel like the thing that's most confusing about that tweet is just like, I feel like he has to know that. And if he doesn't know that, then that's like a huge problem. And I feel like that's kind of like the big thing. It's like, how are you where you are if you don't know this? And if you do know this, why are you saying this?
Yeah.
It's just weird.
It's super peculiar. I really want to read more about his comments tonight. I'm sure he'll have some sort of follow-up, or maybe he won't, but I'm glad you brought up Among Us. And by the way, as far as Chris's Twitter account, I won't get too much further into it, but you can see an interesting picture of Chris looking like kind of like Chris Angel. And then also a picture of this Animorphs rat.
Oh yeah.
Which is disturbing. I don't even want to get into it.
I always love the middle Animorph creatures.
Yeah,
like the ones in between the human and the full
the missing link.
Yeah. They're always so peculiarly rendered. It's wonderful. They're wonderful creatures.
Yeah, because the rendering is interesting, because the half rat still has a t-shirt on and it looks like pants, and then also the rat has the same color division on its fur, but it's maybe it looks like it has a shirt on.
They are their pants, basically. Like they are their clothes as well. which is, a startling reality.
It is startling. I was a little too old, I think, for Animorphs by the time it came out. Maybe not. I don't know. I was too old for a lot of things I was watching.
Everyone was too old for Animorphs.
But I am glad you brought up Among Us, as I was saying, because I did want to talk briefly, and I'm not doing it for political reasons, but not for partisan political reasons, but because it was interesting to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Twitch with 500,000 people watching her playing this game. And it really does make you wonder, where has everyone been on Twitch, like really trying? I know that Trump and Biden and all these people have presences there, but it just really showed you how crazy it is. And now AOC has brought this game to a whole new group of people. So
yeah, I know some of the people who streamed with her. It was pretty weird. I was like, what? What, my friends are streaming with AOC? What? Among Us on Twitch? Excuse me?
It's interesting.
Very strange reality that we're dwelling in.
Yeah, I wonder if it moved the needle in whatever way they're trying to, I guess, for voter registration or whatever. But I just thought that was cool. And certainly something we should be keeping an eye out more from our politicians moving forward. Chris, I wanted to ask you next, how do you feel about Tom Holland as Nathan Drake? They released the first picture of Tom Holland in his Nathan Drake getup, and I'm a little surprised in some ways by this. It comes out July 16th, 2021. I feel like they have everything from the belt up right, and then the pants and the boots don't look right at all to me. I don't know why. It could be literally right, but they look off in this full length picture. So I really like the close up of them. I can get down with that, but I don't know. What do you think of this picture?
It's weird. Like I saw one of my friends tweet about this, and she said, "Am I the only one who feels shockingly nothing about this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of like. I just saw it, and it almost didn't register to me as what it was. I was just like, oh, look, it's a photograph of Tom Holland. And I didn't, even though I knew the context and I knew that it's like Nathan Drake, I just couldn't find it in me to care at all one way or the other. Like I dug, man. Like I dug for a while. And I couldn't muster up a single opinion about it. It was just so fine. It's so funny because the picture's color is so muted too. Yeah,
it's just very beige.
It really, it's just so shockingly like fine. Like I don't know. Like I felt nothing about it. I guess it'll probably be okay. Character wise, like one of the biggest things initially when I heard about this was that, oh man, it's going to be a kind of a stretch for me to believe that this is Nathan Drake. You know what I mean? And then I saw it and I was like, yeah, okay. But I wasn't excited about feeling that way. You know what I mean? It was just like there.
Yeah. I was thinking even in explaining how top up for belt up, he looks good, from belt down he doesn't look good. That's almost canceling each other out into nothing for me as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just explained exactly what I was feeling. Like I still feel like this just looks like a photograph of Tom Holland existing somewhere
in his rugged Caribbean adventuring outfit.
Yeah, like maybe he got lost on a cruise, and he's been stranded for like exactly one day.
It's funny because I don't know that it's iconic outside of games. I don't think it is, but your feedback on this picture is especially telling to me because that whole look of Nathan Drake's handsome face, the ring around his neck, that specific cotton shirt with the unbuttoned buttons, and the double harness, like gun holsters, that's like so iconic. And in the world of PlayStation, and you're right, the more I look at this, the more vanilla it becomes before my very eyes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, this was an interesting one. Just kind of an FYI, I guess, for people. Andrew Arana wrote into us and said, you boys probably heard about Sony releasing the PS5 accessories a couple of weeks before the PS5 release. Why are they doing this? Is it a financial thing? Free up inventory space, build up hype? Am I supposed to fall asleep holding my PS5 camera until the console's release? Just found it an odd move aside from the headset. That makes sense, I guess. As always, I love the show. Chris, I don't know what this means, but he says, Chris, you inspire me to not give up on YouTube. Do you think he means to be a YouTuber or to not give up on YouTube? Like he's about to give up on YouTube as an entity.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll interpret it both ways because they're both flattering to me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So I'm reading a story here on Game Informer right now, and it's true. The PS5's accessories are shipping early, not only from PlayStation Store, but from other digital retailers. And then they'll be appearing in store a couple of weeks early. By the time you might even be hearing this podcast, they might be out there. So keep an eye out. People have been tweeting out pictures of boxed cameras and I guess controllers and stuff. So some of you will be having your hands on them soon. And my assumption is that Sony is comfortable clearing the shipping channels and clearing their I don't know, how do you want to put it? Like their roll of shipments, the things they have to worry about by getting these things out early, because who cares if they leak and who cares if people have them early? You actually want people to go buy their stuff early. That's great. So I think to them, it's just like, fuck it. Like get these things out. They're done. They're ready. Get them out of the warehouses. We'll worry about the consoles next. I assume that's the inspiration behind it. And it's not that uncommon.
Yeah.
In the world of video games for that to happen.
Yeah. I don't think it's a big deal at all. I think it's totally fine. Like, I think, especially with how unpredictable shipping can be lately, with the pandemic kind of like screwing things over for a lot of people like really early on. And like, I don't know if it's necessarily that much of a problem anymore, but I know that I got something recently shipped from like not even that far away, like middle of the country somewhere. And it took like 15 days to get to me. And I'm like, well, weird. Glad I, paid for premium shipping.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. It's probably best to just, get this stuff out there. It's not, like you said, it's not a big deal if they're out there early. You can't really do anything with them except, look at them, or presumably maybe like use the PS5 controller on PC, which is like fine because it's money that you're spending on their stuff. And I think you're probably right. It is probably just to free up the channels and just worry about the big ticket item, which is obviously the machine.
Yeah, it's just less, Occam's razor suggests simplest explanations are the right one. And that seems to be the simplest explanation to me, is just get this out. And
yeah. Also, it's good to just like on a console release day, not to have to worry about like finding accessories. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got the machine. Now I got to get the, the charging fast charge cable and the whatever the hell, an extra controller, a little camera adapter, which I still don't know how they're going to do exactly. It's best to just be able to get that stuff out ahead of time. That way you can just run into the Walmart on Black Friday, kill a mother of 5 and then just take her PlayStation and then run out the back.
Get out of there. Don't even pay for it. You got to get out of there.
Yeah. Don't actually do that, by the way.
No, don't. He's just telling a story. It's just a fictional story.
Yes.
That he's telling. And so don't worry too much about that now. To the camera adapter issue, by the way, it has since been revealed that, and this was through apparently some random interview in some random territory, I guess, and I haven't seen it confirmed anywhere on the US side, although I could just be missing it, but it will be in the box as we predicted. And
yeah,
I guess that will be the cheapest and easiest way for them to do that.
Yeah,
so
it didn't make any sense like otherwise.
No, frankly, it doesn't really make any sense why it doesn't use the same port at all, but I don't pretend to understand technology. Andrew, thank you for writing into us. Now, last week we talked about some controversial stuff with Sony, and it's basically this idea on PS5 that was introduced with PS4 8.0 system update that people could theoretically record your voice chat and then submit it for moderation. So Sony was originally ignoring this, Chris, as I noticed for a few days. And then Catherine Jensen, who's the VP Global Consumer Experience, VP of Global Consumer Experience. I don't know what the fuck that even means, but
yeah,
she works at Sony, and she released this statement on PlayStation blog that clarifies, for better or for worse, what they mean. And so in part, she says, quote, PlayStation gamers learned about this new function in an unexpected way following the recent PS4 8.0 system update. We didn't clearly communicate this feature or explain why we were introducing it, and we apologize for that. When the PS5 console launches in November, PS5 users will be able to chat with PS4 users, which is why we needed to include an advisory with the latest PS4 system update. We should have more clearly explained why this function was being rolled out, along with details on how it will work on the PS5 console. So let me walk you through that now. Once the PS5 console launches, if a PS5 player needs to file a harassment report, they will be able to include up to a 40-second long voice chat clip in their report, 20 seconds of the main conversation with the other player, plus an additional 10 seconds before and after the conversation selection. Only the most recent 5 minutes of a voice chat will be available for a player to use for this reporting function. These reports can be submitted directly through the PS5 console and will be sent to our consumer experience team for moderation, who will then listen to the recording and take action if needed. Some submitted reports won't be valid, and our team will take this as an opportunity to provide guidance and education. There won't be an option to opt out of this voice chat recording function because we want all users to feel safe when playing with others online, not just those who choose to enable it. End quote. So do you think that their clarification makes it better or worse?
I mean, I guess it makes it better, but just the concept of this in general is just inherently off-putting. So you can only really get like a hair's length better in a situation like this. It's like, yeah, okay, it's like the last 5 minutes. I guess it works like any kind of, game capture kind of software that's like ingrained into a modern console, where it's like, okay, yeah, on PlayStation you can record whatever the last 5 minutes were, and it's not a big deal because it's not seen as PlayStation like recording you, even though it is technically recording your gameplay. The fact that it's, your audio and the fact that it's your voice, I feel like this is compounded and made worse by the fact that there's a microphone in the controller. You know what I mean? I feel like that fact maybe makes this a little bit more creepy than it might end up being, because it just kind of makes it feel like they're just trying to record you at this point. But I don't know. I don't think this is going to be used for any real nefarious purposes. I do think, though, that they're probably going to have to sift through a lot of nonsense, out of context, party chat, trolls.
Oh yeah,
I feel like that's really the main thing.
That's the first thing that came up in my mind too. It's so funny you say that, because I'm like, how many people are gonna fuck with this moderation staff to the point where Sony has to give up, unless they literally start banning people for doing it, which is possible on their own end. Like, this is one of those things that, and I think I said this maybe on the last episode, but I don't remember for sure, but I feel like this is a change that only happens when an outside force is applying pressure to a corporation, because companies really want to know. I don't want to say all companies, because buying and selling information now and metadata is a huge market, of course, but generally speaking, companies want as little information about you as possible, because not all of it is germane to what they're doing. So they want to know like what games you play, but they don't really want to have all of this other information. They don't care about all this other information. So when you're applying enough of a force to put this into a console's ecosystem, hire people on the back end, I would imagine this has something to do with government breathing down their necks in some way, or it could be IPs breathing down their necks, or it could be consumers complaining, pending lawsuits, all these kinds of things. I just don't think that a move like this necessarily happens in a vacuum. And I'm with you on the live mic thing, where I just don't want live microphones in my house at all. And I know that that's kind of silly to say. I have microphones on my laptops. Well, I have a microphone I'm speaking into right now on my phone. But like, I don't want an Alexa in my house or anything like that. And I'll be really interested when people finally get their hands on DualSense, if there'll be a layman's way, because I'm stupid with this stuff, but like, can I take my controller apart and like snip that wire? Because I don't want that microphone on. I don't want there to be any risk. Remember I told you the story about how I didn't know that the Vita's microphone defaulted to on?
Yeah.
I learned that in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which came out a year after the console came out. So who knows like what people were saying into those things all around the world.
Oh yeah, no, it's insane. I like the PS5 controller's like microphone is probably like, I'm kind of with you, where I'm like, I did consider, obviously not going ahead and doing it because I don't have it in front of me, but I have considered going in and just completely removing that microphone, because I fail to imagine a reality where I could possibly ever want to use it. But also just the fact that it's there and that it could be on is weird. And that's me saying that, somebody who really doesn't mind live mics. Like, I don't really mind an Alexa. I don't mind that Siri is like, I don't mind that the second I talk about like a Phantom 5 drone to a friend of mine, an advertisement pops up 5 minutes later, like on YouTube or whatever, because my phone was like secretly listening to me. Like, I think that's like really creepy, but at the very least, it's like advertising shit to me that I give a shit about. So it's not even the live mic thing for me. It's just the fact that it has no necessity. Like an Alexa is given value by the convenience of that live mic. And, your phone is given value by the convenience of that live mic. I just don't see the value that's added by having an onboard mic on your PlayStation controller, especially one that's like sandwiched in between all the buttons, or you're just presumably just going to hear a bunch of clicking and clacking. It's going to make party chats like a nightmare for anybody who doesn't, have friends who own the freaking headset. Like it just seems like a nightmare on every front to me.
Yeah, I'm not excited about them. Yeah, there's going to definitely be tutorials about how to do that, and
yeah,
I'll be excited. I mean, with this whole Jeffrey Toobin thing recently too. This is why I literally have a piece of duct tape over the camera on my laptop. I don't need anyone to catch me beating off. I got to be more. Anything's possible, I guess. Just don't beat off during a meeting like this guy apparently.
Right? Yeah, that's a bit much, but. I didn't put duct tape in front of my camera until I saw this clip of Mark Zuckerberg giving an interview, and one of his laptops had tape over it, and I'm like, all right, well, if Zuckerberg's got tape over his mic,
yeah, amen.
Then I guess what reason do I have not to put tape over my not my mic, my camera?
I love Zuckerberg so much because he seems to be turning like into some sort of synthetic. I don't know, like entity, the way he talks about things and like the way he's becoming one, like, he's got like a symbiotic relationship with the internet or something.
He's like a Bionicle or something. Like he's going to be sitting across from Will Smith any minute now, just asking him if he can make art. It's just really uncomfortable. Have you seen that video of him applying the Sweet Baby Ray's to the smoked brisket?
No.
It's a baffling sequence of events that I would recommend you all look up.
Yeah, I got to check that out. That sounds awesome. Okay, so fall is settling in, winter is right around the corner, and we're going to start hibernating soon. Not literally like bears, but away from the cold and the snow and the sleet and all the rest. It's a good time to focus on yourself and prepare to come out of your cocoon in 2021 anew. Maybe you want to work out or eat better or read more, that's all awesome. You definitely want to feel better, but what about looking better too? Well, with Candid's clear aligners, you can straighten your teeth and give yourself the awesome smile you've always wanted. And with an average treatment time of only 6 months, if you act now, you can potentially have that stunning smile in time for summer 2021, which I can only assume will be a globally raucous affair. Candid's clear aligners work differently than wire braces in that they're practically invisible and can be removed when you need to eat, drink, or even go out to a social function. Better yet, everything is done remotely. You don't need to go to a dentist's office or anything like that. Instead, you meet up with your orthodontist virtually, and you'll be with the same orthodontist throughout your treatment. These guys and gals are experts in tooth movement, and while I want to give an appreciative shout out to dentists, when it comes to realigning your teeth, you want to deal with orthodontists who live and breathe this stuff. So start straightening your teeth today for thousands less than braces. Right now, all my listeners can save $75 on Candid Starter Kit. Go to candidco.com/sacred. That's candidco.com/SACRED. And use the code SACRED, SACRED, at checkout to take advantage of this limited time offer. Again, save $75 off of your Candid Starter Kit and start working towards a straighter smile by heading to candidco.com/sacred using the code SACRED at checkout. All right, let's see here. Oh, Matthew O'Sullivan wrote into us and said, are you confident the PS5 will be quiet? Sony seems obsessed with cooling this time around. You could bludgeon a cave troll in the Mines of Moria with that heatsink they've installed, and the updates they can do for the fan seem nuts. I thought this was interesting, actually, because this news, I guess, came out of a 4Gamer interview that someone over there did with Sony. 4Gamer is a popular Japanese video game website. And apparently they said, quote, and this is according to Engadget, who translated it, various games will be released in the future and data on the APU's behavior in each game will be collected. We have a plan to optimize the fan control based on this data, end quote. So apparently they can update how everyone's fans work based on collected ubiquitous metadata from how people's games are being played and how the games are treating their console. I think that's pretty wild. It sounds to me like that means the console probably is intended to be quiet, but won't end up being quiet. What do you think?
I mean, all these machines eventually become loud is kind of how I feel about it. Like my Xbox 360 was super quiet when I got it. Like I didn't really notice any. You go back to any like console review video from like the time that it comes out, and it's always super quiet, and then it gets old and raggedy, and like games become more and more intensive and more demanding of the hardware, and then it becomes super loud, and then that's just sort of something that happens. So I have no doubt that these things have probably been like super super tested, and I think the Series X and the PS5 are both going to be relatively quiet considering the power that they provide. And I think the PS5 is probably going to be super quiet because it's so big, and it has honestly, it has very little reason to be loud given how much room it's going to be taking up. But eventually that thing will be loud, like it will. Like don't go in expecting that this thing's going to be like a mime the entire time you have it, because eventually it will become just a complete asshole. And I don't know. I'm not even really somebody who cares if my console's loud. Like the thing with me is, as long as it doesn't sound like a CD is like breakdancing on railroad tracks, in the machine, like I'm fine. I don't mind the sound of like a consistent drone of a fan. It's like whatever. That's like that just makes me feel like I'm existing and I haven't died. So I'm
always puzzled by what games make my PS4 loud.
Yeah. It's like Life is Strange, and then Red Dead Redemption 2 is just completely quiet.
And it's very weird. I'm having the same experience with G.I. Joe Operation Blackout, which we'll talk about in a little while, but I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this thing sounds like it's about to take off. And then, yeah, you're right. I play something else, and I don't remember like the console being loud even when I was playing the first party stuff earlier this year. But anyway, none of that matters. I do think it's interesting how they're handling the fan. We'll see how quiet this machine is. And like Chris says, obviously it's going to get louder over time. Edwin Castillo wrote into us and he says, why doesn't my mother love me? Why doesn't my mother love me? That's Edwin saying that, not me.
That's a good question. I think I do have a theory. I think the fact that you have Win in your first name is very presumptuous. I think it's a little pretentious, and I think, that might be the reason. Although, honestly, she probably gave that to you, so she should be more angry with herself than anything.
Right.
But that's the only thing I could think of.
He also has the word ill in his last name.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, depending on how you...
Yeah, it could be the skater ill.
Right. Like sick, ill.
Sick,
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sick. All right, Edwin, I don't have the answer for you either. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We just don't know you that well, dude.
No, I don't know. I don't have all the information I need. And frankly, I don't want any more information on this particular topic. Gabriel Duke wrote into us and said, hello, CNC. If you could take a pill and never need to sleep again, would you? The negative effect is that since we spend a third of our lives sleeping, that fraction would be subtracted from your life expectancy. So since you clog your arteries with Five Guys burgers, let's say you would die at 55. On the other hand, you would be awake 24 hours a day until then. Is that a worthy trade-off? So would you basically subtract a third of your life to never sleep and thus be awake and not need to sleep ever again? Sounds awful to me, mostly because I love sleeping. I love to sleep. I don't sleep enough at all, but I love to sleep. So I don't want that to remember. It was like the guy that wrote into us asking us if we would rather just take pills than eat. And I'm like, eating is one of the only things I actually like doing.
It's the big problem with this is like, when I say I wish I couldn't sleep, or like, I understand the premise here. It's like, oh, you would be so much more productive and you would have so much more time if you didn't need to sleep. But that is operating under the assumption that your life expectancy doesn't go down one entire third. That's kind of part of that reasoning. If I lose a third of my life and I just don't have to sleep anymore, that's the same amount of time, except it's all condensed and I have no breaks. So it just sounds way worse, because now I'm really against the clock. I don't see the purpose. If I could take a pill, never sleep again, and still live till the ripe old age of 36, then count me in. But
yeah, that's my age.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just turned 36.
Things aren't going that well.
No, I mean,
I'm shocked.
I'm lucky
shocked
to be alive.
Yeah, no, I wake up and I can hear my bones scraping against each other, and it's just I don't understand how people are old and alive.
Yeah, it's
it really is
crazy.
magnificent. If you see an old person, just you should be standing in abject bewilderment that they're there, because I can't imagine if everything goes downhill after this, like how the hell do you even subsist?
I imagine I think about that sometimes. Like, imagine what that old person must feel like right now. Not spry.
Yeah, no, but like they must be used to it. Like I was actually having a conversation like with my mom, who after I said this thought I was insane, probably correctly. But I was thinking about just how strange a dog's anatomy is. Like a dog has to like look up, but like the way they look up looks like it's so painful. And like, do you think if you took like a human consciousness and put it in like a dog's body, it would just feel all of this pain that a dog is just sort of used to and doesn't even think about?
It's probable. They probably have a much higher threshold for discomfort.
Oh yeah, because they can't conceptualize that it means bad things for what are we even talking about?
I don't know. It's like we've gotten real philosophical here. Let's see. Oh yeah, one more here. We like to educate on our show sometimes.
Yeah.
Gavin Alexander wrote into us and said, "Hi, colonoscopy, Christian Grey, and crop dusting Dustin." Well, Dustin's not here today, so
Good.
Fuck you. Can someone explain to me just what exactly isometric means in gaming terms? I hear this phrase tossed around so much, but have never truly understood what it means. Is it just a fancy way of saying that a game is developed in 3D? What truly makes a game isometric? Any insight would be greatly appreciated, and thank you all for doing what you do. Actually, Gavin, as I understand it, although Chris might have more insight into this, I'm pretty sure the use of isometric explicitly means it's not 3D, but rather giving the appearance of 3D. Do you have like an easy way to explain this? Because the way I would always explain isometric is that it's like if you take a cube and tilt it on its side and remove the top of it, think about looking at a game through that prism. So it's not a 2D flat plane, but it's also not a top-down flat plane. It's somewhere in between. So think of, like, Final Fantasy Tactics is a really great example of an isometric game. Is there a cleaner way to explain it than that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because there are isometric. I guess in the strictest sense, isometric is, it's typically pixel art, but the angle is, 2D, and it's supposed to like represent. It's supposed to showcase 2D environments as if they were 3D, but I feel like isometric is more of like a camera placement thing. Like an RTS, is kind of isometric, and like, games like Bastion and Hades, a lot of the Supergiant games are isometric, and, I would say that a lot of tactics-based games are isometric. It really is more about just kind of that bird's eye view and the kind of, the idea of like moving on a plane, but it's not necessarily just 2D. I feel like the best way to understand this is to really just look at a bunch of isometric games. I would look at Bastion, I would look at Transistor, I would look at Hades, I would look at maybe even something like Gears Tactics or any Final Fantasy Tactics probably. I would even argue a lot of the parts of, Final Fantasy VII, like whenever you're free roaming, that's kind of an isometric view. So like, I guess I don't really know like what the real definition of it is, because I think it's definitely one of those things that meant something at one point, but because the lines between 3D and 2D are being blurred constantly, it kind of doesn't matter.
So I looked it up here, just the Wikipedia.
It's like pseudo 3D, but it's not.
Yeah. It's
not 2.5D. Like 2.5D is like typically scrolling and like, like Little Big Planet.
Yeah, this says, quote, isometric video game graphics are graphics employed in video games and pixel art, which angle the viewpoint to reveal facets of the environment that would not be visible from a top-down perspective or side view, thereby producing a three-dimensional effect.
Yeah, so it's bird's eye. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Despite the name, well, no. Yeah, it would be bird's eye if the bird is not looking below him, but in front of him.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a bird crashing down into the ground at 45 degrees.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, I shouldn't be talking about math, but I did want to explain from my point of view, and I guess I think we over-explained it. If anything, it's what isometric means, and it can be in 3D now, I guess natively, but originally it was designed to work around the fact that things didn't exist in 3D, and that's where the perspective comes from. But we would love to hear more. I'm sure we have people that know all about this shit.
Yeah,
listening.
Because I don't know what it means. I just know it when I see it. But I guess the earliest, actually, now I think about it, the earliest isometric game is probably Qbert, right?
Yeah, that's. Well, let me see. I'm gonna go back to the page. Isometric game. Okay, here we go. So isometric video games. Another early isometric game is Qbert. Yeah. Saxon, yeah, that's a good one. SimCity 2000, and then Civilization. So XCOM, yeah, these are the games. Diablo, these are the games where you really think about.
Yeah, so it literally basically has boiled down at this point to just mean like top down, but at an angle.
Yeah, three-fourths view. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There you go.
That's
educated.
Enough of that. Thank you, Gab. Yeah, Gab, I think we educated ourselves more than we educated Gavin, but nonetheless, or at least tried to talk about what we know intrinsically. I think that's the case with a lot of things with video games for me. Well, a lot of things generally. I feel that way even about English language structure. You can get really nerdy about the way sentences are structured and what everything's called in a sentence and stuff. And I'm like, at some point, I don't give a fuck about any of this. I don't know any of it. And I just know how to speak English. And I know how to write it.
Like, I don't care.
I couldn't really explain it.
Like, I don't care if you pronounce umlaut, correctly,
As long as you use it.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about what we're playing here, Chris. You brought this up earlier when we were talking, and I'm really surprised to see this as if it's almost a joke. It says here you're playing Life is Strange 2.
I am.
Which I did not expect. So talk to me about this.
Yeah, well, I'm in New York. I am with a female here, and I was looking for stuff to play that wouldn't put me in a strange position where I'm just sort of playing something that is beyond comprehension, and she's just sort of like baffled by what she's looking at. So I think she brought up, oh, we should play Life is Strange 2 and see if you hurt anybody. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. Because I really didn't like the first Life is Strange at all. Like, I found it really distracting with how teenagery it was trying to be, and how like, oh yeah, hell yeah. It's like, okay, I get it. She rewinds time. I can't with this. But at a reluctant suggestion, I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I'm on like the 4th episode, and I'm not really that big of a fan of these kinds of games, but I do think it's a lot more interesting, and I think it's pretty cool. For what it is, it is obviously a very standard kind of don't nod, which is just kind of a little bit derivative of Telltale style gameplay, where it's, although I would argue, way better than Telltale. But it's just it's a story-based game. It's narrative-based. You make all these decisions. You see, like, what percentage of people did this, what percentage of people told this character what to do, and what, it's one of those kinds of simpler Detroit Become Humans, and it's old at this point. But I'm playing through it, and I'm enjoying it. It's not nearly as irritating as the first game was to me.
It's a ringing endorsement if I've ever heard one.
It's good. I think if you like these kinds of games, I don't think it's a bad one at all.
Yeah, adventure gaming. I agree with you. Adventure gaming is a really wonderful introductory genre for lots of new gamers, whoever they are, because it's usually not active, and it allows you to kind of slowly get used to the controls and stuff like that. So adventure games like that, especially interactive ones, I think are really attractive for people that don't play.
It's a good game to play with people who don't play video games, as frequently as people like you and I do. Like she plays like The Witcher and stuff, but like, I'm not gonna play Destiny, in front of this person. Because it's just
that's a pretty hardcore game, though. The Witcher is a pretty hardcore game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, but it's a little bit more, you can see your character, as opposed to like Destiny, where it's like, if you've never played a video game and you showed somebody like an FPS, they'd probably be. I think we were talking about this in an earlier episode, but like, I feel like FPS is probably the hardest kind of game for somebody who doesn't really involve themselves with video games to grasp immediately, because you don't even see what you're controlling. It's kind of abstract if you really think about it. because none of it is really how it would be in real life. Like, people are holding the guns like hilariously close to their faces. And it's almost like you're playing as the gun, but even then, not really.
Yeah, you're playing as like someone's hips, basically. I think I've said this before, but I remember Mark Ryan at IGN pointing out in Killzone 2 that when you run up to like I don't know, like a window or something, like your guy is basically like 3 feet tall. It's hysterical when you really like, you're basically like walking up to other characters and you're basically your character's crotch, which is hysterical because that's just the easiest way, I guess, to play from that perspective. But you're right. It's like someone saying to you like, oh, I love that game. Who's that game? Or what's that game where you play as the gun? Love that game.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, no, Life is Strange 2 is good. I actually like a lot of the characters in it, which is a nice change of pace from the previous.
Sick.
Which I just like. Sick. God.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad you're enjoying that. I have a couple of things to talk about here. So the big one I want to talk about this week is actually Streets of Rage 4. Ironically, it's also because I was playing with my special lady friend, and she's a core gamer, so she can hang with all these different kinds of games. And I had bought Streets of Rage 4 when it came out in late April, and I actually did a stream of it and never got back to it. It was pretty hard. I got to like the 5th or 6th stage. So we sat down and played it together. I was telling her, I'm like, I don't even remember the last time I ever played a game with someone. It's been years since I've sat down and played, especially beginning to end. It's got to have been since the PS3 era, I would assume, since I've done that. And it's a really wonderful game. I think Lizard Cube, the developer, has done a really good job recreating Streets of Rage, which has been a franchise that was largely dormant. I mean, when you think about the original games, the first one came to Genesis in 1991, and the third one came to Genesis in 1994. So it's been 16 years. And I really am fascinated by this company, Dotemu, which is a French publisher. These guys seem to have some sort of relationship brewing with Sega. I wouldn't be surprised if they were purchased by Sega eventually, because they work not only in this now with Streets of Rage as a publisher, but they were also working on Wonder Boy and all this other stuff. So they have this old school Sega flavor, which I'm really fascinated by. But I highly recommend Streets of Rage 4. It is so good. It's shot up the list as one of my favorite games of the year. And I just love brawlers. I can use a good brawler every now and again. And this is one of them. I don't think it's as good as River City Girls, which came out last year. And that is in the Kunio-kun franchise, of course, which has been being revived for some reason, which is awesome because that game is a little deeper. It's non-linear and it has all these like kind of leveling mechanics and experience mechanics and stuff, which I think is cool. Streets of Rage 4 is much more straightforward. So if you're looking for something more arcadey, I highly recommend Streets of Rage 4. And then I finally beat G.I. Joe Operation Blackout. And this is the low budget game that came out recently, just a couple weeks ago, for the G.I. Joe franchise, which, as the audience knows, I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan from way back. And I beat it on the hardest difficulty level. There were a few pain points in the game, but overall, it was a really disappointing product. And I don't want to shit on the people that made it, because I think they probably I'm sure they did the best they could in the confines that they were given, but it's a confusing product because it's this really vanilla and empty 3D third-person pseudo cover-based shooter with just the same 4 stages used over and over again, basically, as you're going through them in different ways. The same 3 or 4 types of enemies, really loose gunplay, and kind of this really cheap-looking Fortnite aesthetic to it. And what's disappointing about it is that it didn't need to be this. It could have been something cheaper and something cooler, and they could have gotten what they wanted, which was maybe a more, I don't know, reliable, at least critical G.I. Joe hit. There hasn't been a G.I. Joe game that's been any good since the NES. And so it's a shame Hasbro owns other IP like Transformers that they really treat with a little bit more respect in the gaming space. And I don't know why you want to try to get G.I. Joe back off the ground like they are with the toys and all of that. And the toys are awesome, but you release this game that's just, it's $40. It's way too expensive. It's half-assed. It has no online multiplayer, even though it can be played in co-op. You have to do that locally, which is awkward. And it just doesn't take advantage of what makes G.I. Joe tick. And I don't want to spoil the game too much for anyone, but like, it's just surprising how they don't understand what makes G.I. Joe work, which is mostly the bad guys and mostly the different kinds of bad guys, the different Vipers and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just like fighting the same enemies over and over again. And the robotic enemies, like I said last week, because they don't want to kill anyone, it's corny and it's too bad. I did reach out to Hasbro and the official G.I. Joe account on Twitter to tell them that I would have Lilimo make a 2D side-scrolling G.I. Joe game and that I would fund it myself. But they have not responded.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm telling you, Hasbro, you're not listening to this, but I could do that. I can make that happen for you. No problem at all. No investment on your part needed, just access to the license and leave it all in me. But you won't let me do that, of course. Now, Jake Whitaker wrote into us on Patreon, Chris. He says, Colin, you are always saying that you don't care how games perform in terms of sales. Then you go off last week about how you feel the need to give Hasbro all the money for their mediocre G.I. Joe games so that you can keep getting G.I. Joe stuff. So when push comes to shove, you do care how some games sell. It's okay to admit we are here for you, Captain. Yeah, it's totally it's an exception to my rule. I want everything G.I. Joe to sell exceptionally well. Definitely.
I think every rule, has exceptions. That's kind of the point, almost.
Yeah, the exception to the rule.
Yeah, you can't have too many exceptions, otherwise you're a hypocrite.
No. Right.
But, an exception here or there is fine.
Now, Chris, Joshua Anderson wrote into us too. He says, Sub CNC, I was thinking, do you guys see this next gen as the possible renaissance of mid-tier AA games? With current gen having had the big push of indie single A, could a lot of those developers be growing to mid-tier level this next generation? Keep up the great work. His question is interesting because he's talking about smaller developers moving into the AA space, while what usually happens in the AA space is that developers are made to exist there, and that's where they exist, and they rarely come out of there, and some publishers dwell in that space as they are. But I bring this up only because that G.I. Joe Operation Blackout game could have been a AA mid-tier game, but doesn't even really reach that level of quality. And so just on an anecdotal basis, because we're not seeing too many of those boxed games anymore, I think the mid-tier AA game has actually raised its level. We were talking about that game like The Surge and Vampire, which is free this month on PlayStation Plus. Those are more like the mid-tier games, and those are of a much higher quality than what we would have used to have looked at as mid-tier games, which are now kind of like budget games, I guess. So if anything, maybe we're getting like this unfortunate and unnecessary budget tier of games that are not shovelware. It's not like Carnival Games or something like that. It's just not a game that anyone wants. And Carnival Games sold like 15 million copies, so clearly people wanted it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think AA or middle market games. I feel like this generation isn't. It might be a continuation, but I feel like this is already happening. I feel like even just with a lot of IP being remade, like Destroy All Humans remake and Tony Hawk 1 and 2, like those are definitely like they're AAA, I guess. But they feel to me more like, here's a middle market game that's just so happens to be from, Activision in the case of like Tony Hawk and like you said, Vampire and what was the other one? The Surge.
Right.
I've seen a lot of the middle market kind of exploding, like the Greedfall and stuff like that, which like Greedfall is like definitely indie. And a lot of these games kind of depend on how good they look, really. Like there are a lot of indie games, like Hellblade is an indie game that looks, triple A. So it really does depend on like how they look, and to me anyway, is like how I decipher what's what. But I feel like the middle market is currently like exploding again. There was a long period of time where we kind of just had, either The Last of Us or Undertale, and that was kind of it. And I guess you had the mobile space, which kind of like supplemented that sphere a little bit. A lot of movie tie-in games that would have previously existed in the middle market space kind of went to phones. I remember when that started happening, and that was kind of lame. Especially when we used to get such great, movie tie-in games. What was that Wolverine game that was like better than the movie?
Yeah, that was a Raven game.
Yeah,
which is even crazier.
We used to get stuff like that a lot, and that halted pretty early in the 2010s and even later on. But I feel like we're already experiencing a bit of a renaissance with that tier. Whether or not it continues, remains to be seen. But I don't know. I feel like even what you call AAA and middle market and indie is a lot more subjective now than it used to be. Like, because you could presumably have Activision make something like Undertale, but, would it be a AAA game? Or would it be like an indie game? Like, it would clearly be an indie game at a glance, but I don't know. I don't know what you do.
It's interesting because you brought up the game Greedfall, which came out in 2019. And I brought up The Surge, and those both come from the same publisher, which is a French publisher, Focus Home Interactive. And they're worth keeping an eye on for all the listeners out there that are interested in more of these AA kind of bordering on AAA space. So these are the guys that published, well, they publish every year. They publish the farming simulator games, but they published A Plague Tale: Innocence, which was a huge hit. And it's kind of in that in-between space. And they're publishing the Sumo Digital game, Hood, Outlaws, and Legends, which I think looks really cool. We talked about that on an earlier episode that comes out next year. And then they're the guys that publish Vampire. They're the guys that publish The Surge. They're the guys that publish Greedfall. And they work with interesting developers like Spider, and Sumo Digital obviously is working on Hood, and Asobo working on A Plague Tale and all of that. So space to keep in mind. They almost remind me of a better THQ before THQ went out of business, like the original THQ.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on all of that for you. And then the only other game I have to talk about here is Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana, which I've been playing on Vita for weeks. I just kind of play it an hour or two at night. Nothing new to report there, but I'll have more information on that soon. And then I'm pretty sure we talked about this last week. I could be crazy, but Anu Sakani wrote in and said, "Hello there, Colin and Chris and Dustin, if you're there again. Have you guys played any of Ghost of Tsushima Legends? If so, what are your thoughts? Personally, I find it rather enjoyable and a unique multiplayer experience amongst a deluge of samey experiences in the multiplayer realm. Frankly, I'd say it's comparable to Factions in its uniqueness. Legends gives me a lot of hope for future Sony multiplayer endeavors personally. But what do you guys think? Keep up the great work, guys." A lot of people wrote in about this, but didn't Dustin talk about this last week? Am I crazy? Did it not happen?
I feel like that didn't happen.
God, I'm fucking out of my mind.
I feel like maybe we talked about it and maybe I said no.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
I don't know. I don't think he brought it up, but Dustin would know, obviously.
Yeah, so, and also everyone else that listens to the show would probably know as well whether it came up or not.
I mean, we were here and we didn't know, so I don't know. Who the hell knows?
I've been hearing awesome things. I mean, this is not the kind of game I want to play. I love playing Ghost of Tsushima itself, but not Legends. But I've been hearing phenomenal things about this product, and it's a little surprising, although pleasantly so. There are a lot of people saying they can't believe that this is even free and are really enjoying it, but I'm not going to give it a go. Do you have any intention of jumping into this or not so much?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think once I'm home and I have a little bit more time, like now's not really a great time to be, playing video games with my friends for like 7 hours because I'm home and with people. But, once I get home, I'm definitely interested in giving it a shot. All of my roommates are kind of on it right now, and I have heard nary a criticism, So
fair enough.
So it sounds like it's good.
Yeah, maybe we'll have more to say about it. I could have sworn Dustin had something to say about it last week, but apparently I'm totally senile, so
I don't know, maybe I'm senile. And
who knows? A lot of people wrote in, so
maybe we're both senile. It's a senile podcast.
It definitely, there's no doubt about that. All right, so let's get into the news. Number one, I wanted to open with this, although I don't have much to say about it. I didn't even actually write anything up about it, but we got a few letters about it. So Bix Hutch wrote into us and said, "Jesus Christ, did anybody see that Sony put a legal disclaimer on the PS5 that nobody in Hong Kong can say anything bad about China? This is getting bad, man. Something needs to be done ASAP. China is legit quietly inserting themselves everywhere." So I was Googling around about this, Chris, because some people had linked me out. Did anyone link to you about this, or did you hear about this before reading about the show today?
No, I saw it in the doc, and I did a little bit of research, and I just kind of found a bunch of stuff that like I seemed a bit dubious, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too. Now, I'm not saying that this update didn't happen, so let me tell people what's happening here. Apparently, there is a new end user licensing agreement for Hong Kong PlayStation customers that in part says the following, and this is a screenshot that's being circulated. And I'll tell you in a minute why I don't want to talk too much more about it. But here's what it says. You may not use your account or use PSN in any way to create, reproduce, publish, or disseminate any information which opposes the basic principles in the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, endangers the security of the PRC, divulges PRC state secrets, or jeopardizes the sovereignty and unification of the PRC, damages the honor and interest of the PRC, violates, and PRC is the what is it? People's Republic of China.
Yeah.
Violates PRC policies on religion or propagates heresies or superstition, disseminates rumors, disrupts social order or undermines social stability, disseminates obscenity, pornography, gambling, violence, or instigates others to commit crimes, is prohibited by PRC laws, administrative regulations, and other provisions. Now, this is apparently the version 16.00 of the Hong Kong EULA for PSN. Now, to Chris's point, this has been circulated. I'm reading it on TechRaptor, which isn't like a disreputable website, but certainly not like an IGN or anything like that. I just, in Googling around about it, couldn't find any real information about it. So I don't have anything to say about it because I'm not even sure it's real. I would suspect that it is real because it is like linked out, I guess, to some Sony websites, and I don't know. I just don't have enough information to be able to authoritatively talk about it. So I did want to bring it up, but I don't have anything else to say about it right now. Other than that, if it's real and as it seems, then it's very disturbing, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely believe that it exists within, China. I could believe that this is a stipulation that's in a lot of devices or whatever, but yeah, I'm very much with you where I couldn't find anything that didn't seem a little bit weird. Needless to say, it's disconcerting in any event. The fact that it is believable is concerning enough.
Yeah, that's certainly true, and I didn't want people to think I was ignoring it. I just don't feel like I have enough information to give you any more insight right now, but maybe that will change next week and we'll have some more information. It could be fake, I don't know. But yeah, to Chris's point, I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, but yeah, no one seems to be picking this up in more, if you want to call them, reputable circles. And so I'm a little hesitant to dive any deeper. So we will move on now. Number 2, it appears Sony owns Studio Sucker Punch, the team responsible for the recently released critical hit Ghost of Tsushima on PS4, is hiring for a sequel to its most recent game. Specifically, the team is looking for a narrative writer, quote, to join our writing team and help create engaging narrative content for upcoming projects, end quote. Projects, plural, by the way. Ooh. This could indicate DLC and Ghost of Tsushima 2 or Ghost of Tsushima 2 and something else entirely. What's telling is one of the position's requirements that's actually listed last. Quote, desire to write stories set in feudal Japan, end quote. Pluses include, quote, knowledge of feudal Japanese history, end quote. So Sucker Punch's intentions speak for themselves, especially when writing and narrative design are among the first things you tackle on a new project. Sucker Punch, purchased by Sony in 2011, is responsible for the Sly Cooper and Infamous trilogies and is located in Washington State, USA. Not a huge surprise here, but pretty big news. They are outwardly hiring for multiple projects, and they are outwardly hiring for more Ghost of Tsushima. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like you said, I don't think this is really surprising. I think the game ends at a pretty optimal point for a sequel. I do wonder how they will... I wonder how they'll treat the open-ended, the choice that exists at the end of Ghost of Tsushima and whether or not, because based on, I'm not trying to spoil it, but like the choice that you make at the end of Ghost of Tsushima has pretty big implications about major characters going forward. And I don't know, there could presumably be we could presumably play completely different Ghost of Tsushima 2s if they actually like branch out in a way that's really married to the original concept of the game.
I would love that. I mean, I think that would be so cool because as we've discussed in previous episodes, when kind of considering the ending of Ghost of Tsushima, which we won't spoil here, you can go listen to our spoiler cast and review discussion for that. But when we considered that, I talked a little bit about how when Infamous 2 came out in 2011, that as I remember, Sucker Punch basically had to say that one ending or the other was canon from the original game. In other words, making half of the original game kind of something that never really happened, which is always shitty. That's why I was always so mad when Disney bought Star Wars and then basically erased the expanded universe. And I'm like, I've read like 30 of these books and it's like it never even happened. It doesn't even matter. Not that Star Wars really happened, but you understand what I'm saying. So it's interesting to your point that they're going to have to make a decision on that. But I'm wondering if they're moving right into the next game or if they're going to do some standalone DLC, because Infamous Second Son got its standalone DLC, although that was ready much quicker. I don't think you'd be hiring for a writer for that. So this seems to be indicative of a new project. And my only thought about them being so open about it, Chris, because they are being surprisingly open about what they're hiring for. And my assumption is that they're doing this because what they need is actually very specific, and it might take them time to find the appropriate person, someone that's knowledgeable on Japanese history, that has experience writing video games and knows feudal Japanese history and also the way that they kind of tweaked it for the story and has ideas. I mean, it's not just hiring a narrative writer. You need to hire a very specific person, and maybe potentially a Japanese person, which I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll keep an eye out on that. But I did love their openness. They don't say they're hiring for it, but it would be funny if they're making another game in feudal Japan. I do think part of Sly Cooper 3 maybe took place in feudal Japan. I could be wrong about that.
They make a Sly Cooper game entirely in feudal Japan, and that's their next thing. Complete.
I'd love that if they did that. Or Infamous in feudal Japan. Tie it all together. All right, this one's interesting. Number 3, it looks like Kojima Productions, the Japanese studio helmed by famous game creator Hideo Kojima, is officially hiring for its next project. Keyword project, as the brief tweet from the studio doesn't make it clear that they're hiring for a game, though they likely are. The confusion, of course, comes from Kojima himself, who, during Death Stranding's press tour, repeatedly said that he may not make another game immediately, and has interest in getting into film and other avenues of creativity. But diving deeper into the Japanese language job listings, which are all for employment out of Tokyo, it's clear that they are making a game. They're looking for writers, project managers, producers, game designers, UI artists, 2D artists, lighting artists, VFX artists, and cinematic artists, as well as animators, programmers, sound designers, and more. Kojima Productions, which is now an independent entity, but which was owned by beleaguered publisher Konami for 14 years prior, is best known for its many Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid games, the latter launching on PS1 in 1998. The last Metal Gear Solid game, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, came to PS4 back in 2015. The studio has since made Death Stranding on behalf of Sony, which funded and published the game, and it's available on both PS4 and PC, having launched last year. So we have no idea what this is. Sony hasn't had anything to say about working with Kojima again, which I think is conspicuous. I feel like that would be a big PR win for them right now, even though Death Stranding didn't light the world on fire. To just kind of secure him again, I think would do a lot for them, especially for their Japanese-centric image. But I don't know that they're making another game for Sony based on the listings being on Kojima Productions' website and Sony having not said anything about it because they would be funding the game.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think's happening here? Do you think we're getting Death Stranding 2? Do you think they're working on something else with someone else? Because I'm sure they were offered... Well, first of all, I know for a fact that they were offered money by other big publishers before Sony locked them down. So I'm sure those publishers are still interested today.
Yeah, I think they're definitely working on something. And it is a game. I don't think they're working on a Death Stranding 2, though. I think he's probably working on something either completely different or maybe something that could potentially be, a revival of an old project that didn't really find its footing. I think he could be working on a horror game. I think that's
like Silent Hill, you're saying.
Yeah, I think it could potentially be like something like Silent Hill, if not Silent Hills, because I maybe that's just my hope, because PT was just so good and so small, and just the thought of something full scale being that good from him and whoever partners he chooses is just, I feel like he could make an incredible horror game. Like I really do, but it's kind of hard to say. I wouldn't put much stock into what Kojima says as far as like, oh yeah, I might not make another game again, because he's been saying that since like the 2000s, and he just keeps, he just keeps making games. I feel
he
like
won't stop.
Yeah, didn't he say he was gonna make like every Metal Gear Solid game was gonna be like the last one?
Yeah, everyone assumed it was Konami that was like had a gun to his head basically, which I'm sure it kind of was.
I'm sure it probably was, but also at the same time, like every single game he made was pretty wild. Yeah, as far as like, I don't think like the work that goes into those games are necessarily the work that would go into games that you're making at the purely at the will of a megalith publisher. You know what I mean? I think there's a personal desire there too, but I'm just hoping for some kind of resurgence of Silent Hill.
That's the dream for a lot of people, is these kind of persistent rumors that Konami is working with Sony behind the scenes, either on some IP transference or whatever the case might be for Silent Hill and for Castlevania, which is what I really want. Mm-hmm. I would love for that to get into Studio Japan's hands, for them to subcontract to someone. So that dream could be alive. It would be a huge coup for Konami too, to kind of get back in people's good graces by at least letting their IP go or supporting their IP in a more meaningful way. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited for that too, but I'm trying not to get my hopes up, because it would be really interesting for Konami and Kojima to get back together. But that's such bad. See, the reason I don't believe it, if I had a bet on it, even though it's possible, I'm wrong about things all the time, but I don't know that Konami would want Kojima working on their stuff. I don't know. No. I don't know that. Yeah, there's bad blood through the roof there.
No, the history is really bad. I'm not saying that I think he's working on Silent Hill. I think since he's expressed specific interest in working on Silent Hill, I think he could potentially build something that is spiritually reminiscent of it, or just something horror related in general. I don't even give a shit if it's called Silent Hill. Call it whatever the hell you want. You know, give Kojima Fatal Frame, you know, and I'll play it. You know, I don't really care what it is. I feel like the way that he thinks about game design, even just like in early Metal Gear Solid games, like Psycho Mantis and the controller ports is just so wild of an idea, and just having the brain that could conceptualize that kind of mechanic for a stealth game working on something that is horror infused regardless of IP just sounds like such an amazing thing that I just really want that to happen.
Yeah, amen. We will keep our fingers crossed. We'll hear from Kojima maybe in the next couple of years about what he's working on next. I do again say that if Sony was working with him, that we would have found out already. Yeah, but if it's based on IP that's out of their control, then that could be in the works still. So
who knows?
Might not be time yet. Number 4, in a wide-ranging and interesting interview with Kotaku, Xbox boss Phil Spencer spoke more about Microsoft's record-breaking acquisition of Bethesda, the publisher, and all of its developers and IP and technologies and more for the sum of $7.5 billion. Here in the PlayStation ecosystem, interest has swirled since this deal because it seemingly indicates that future Bethesda-published games, like The Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield or Fallout 5, wouldn't be on PlayStation hardware. The question that's been commonly asked since the deal is, could Microsoft recoup the investment they made without making its games playable on rival hardware? When asked point blank by Kotaku's interviewer, Phil Spencer said in part, quote, "Yes, I don't want to be flip about it. This deal was not done to take away games from another player base like that. Nowhere in the documentation that we put together was, how do we keep other players from playing these games? We want more people to be able to play games, not fewer people to be able to play games. But I'll also say in the model, I'm just answering directly the question you had. When I think about where people are going to be playing and the number of devices that we had, and we have xCloud and PC and Game Pass in our console base, I don't have to go ship those games on any other platform other than the platforms that we support in order to kind of make the deal work for us, whatever that means," end quote. Now, this is another one of those situations, Chris, where people are interpreting this one way and I interpret it the entire different way. Mm-hmm. This to me says, yeah, we are going to bring our games to PlayStation 5. And I feel like I could understand why people are not reading it that way, but I read it that way. I'm curious how you read it before we get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, no, I think they're still coming to PS5. I just think it's a lot of free money. That there's no reason not to. Really, like I could see maybe like timed exclusivity and maybe maybe exclusivity for DLC or whatever the hell. I could see a lot of that happening where maybe PlayStation players get a little bit shafted a little bit just because they have to make some kind of use out of the IPs that they've invested in on their platforms that they've invested in. But I see no reason why you would be like, okay, we could sell this game wholesale on another platform and sell it wholesale on our platform and sell it on subscription on our platform and on PC. I just don't understand why you would arbitrarily shut down a revenue stream, especially when you've had a pretty storied history at this point, I would say, of supporting games regardless of whether or not they're on Xbox or PlayStation or not. I think they didn't have to bring Minecraft Dungeons to PlayStation. You know what I mean? Like, that was completely unnecessary. Like, because nobody was clamoring for it, and they did it anyway. So yeah, I would still say that these games are coming to PlayStation.
Here's my thing. There's two different parts of this statement from Spencer that I think indicate the so-called agnostic approach. He says he's asked, can they make money without selling the games on rival hardware? And he says yes. So he says, yes, we can. But then he says later, this deal was not done to take games away from another player base like that. We want more people to be able to play games, not fewer people to be able to play the game. So that's number one.
Yeah.
And then he does say, but I'll also say in the model, when I think about where people are going to be playing, and he talks about xCloud and PC and Game Pass, he interrupts himself in the middle of that statement to say, I'm just answering directly the question that you had.
Right.
So he's not, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's not saying like, so he doesn't have this PR answer of being like, our games are, he would say it. If I were on that interview, I'd be like, say it. You know what I mean? Because right now you won't say it because of course the answer is that you're figuring this out, but I still stand by the answer being that those games will come to PlayStation 5. And I feel like he says it twice in this statement, depending, of course, on how you read it. Now, people are a little up in arms about some of this stuff with me because they're like, well, it's fanboyism for me to want this. And to me, I'm like, well, even if you think I'm a PlayStation fanboy, and I don't think I am one, I don't really have any love for Bethesda. I love machine games, and that's an id. But I'm not like really clamoring for Elder Scrolls or Starfield. I don't care that much, to be honest with you. So it's not a matter of like my personal taste. I just think that this is obvious. And I will say this is a money in, money out operation too. They spent $7.5 billion on this product. Now, assuming they make $100 million from the purchase in profit per year, that's 75 years to recoup that profit. And they're not going to be making $100 million a year on that purchase. In fact, they're probably going to be losing substantial money on this because Game Pass is losing money. And the more people that sign up for it and the bigger the install base becomes, the more they're going to have to feed it with their own games. So I don't actually believe his interpretation either. Yeah, I guess maybe they could literally make their money back, but they're not going to without opening things up. And I just feel like, especially that thing when he says, I'm just answering directly the question that you had. He interrupts himself to say that. In other words, to tell people, I'm not telling you that these games won't come. And I feel like they would say so. Why wouldn't you say it if it was true? That's a huge thing. If I bought Bethesda and I was like, by the way, yes, all future Bethesda games will only be on Xbox. Why is that so hard to say?
Yeah.
Because it's not true.
I just don't think they would just turn down money like that. Like it's an entire platform of people that you are arbitrarily not reaching. I think that they have a lot to gain from kind of having some level of exclusivity as far as functionality goes, in the sense that you're like, yeah, you could buy Elder Scrolls 6 on PlayStation 5 for $70, or you could come to our platform and play it instantly with Game Pass, or stream it instantly with xCloud, or you don't even have to have a console to play it on our platform through Game Pass. And it's like they're playing the subscription game, and they're really kind of, the exclusivity that they're selling is in the flexibility of the software that you can get on that platform. It's not there. I don't think Microsoft is in the game of just pure exclusivity of software. Not anymore.
No, I don't think so either. And I think that they're actually ahead of the curve in a lot of ways by not being like that and being more open. I think your example of Minecraft Dungeons is right on. They didn't have to release that game everywhere. That would have been an appealing actually game to be like, this is a Minecraft Xbox exclusive. We don't want to go all the way with Minecraft, but we will. So Microsoft has shown very little propensity to buy big teams and then hold them hostage, which, and again, I brought this up weeks ago when people were like, well, you wouldn't say the same thing if Sony brought Bethesda. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. If Sony brought Bethesda, they would have already told you that those games were going to be only on PlayStation. Yeah. So it's two different companies acting in two different ways. But I think Phil Spencer I think you got to read between the lines a little bit with Phil. And I don't know why he wouldn't say it other than, again, the fact that it's just not true. And so you shouldn't say it and set up false expectations, obviously. All right. Number 5, just a quick one here. Thankfully, Sony has finally confirmed what streaming services will be available on PlayStation 5 from day one. And the list is both pretty truncated and not all that surprising. The write-up for this on the PlayStation blog does stress that this is only some of the entertainment apps and not all of them, but they are, and these are the ones they decided to call out, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Disney+, Hulu, Netflix, Peacock, Spotify, Twitch, and YouTube. I will say the Apple TV inclusion is pretty key because it's not available on PS4. And I learned that the hard way because I wanted to watch and did watch like half of that For All Mankind alternate history show. And I had to download it. I had to get the show on my like smart TV, which I usually don't do because Apple TV is not available on PlayStation. So, but otherwise, that's just informative. No huge surprises there. Nothing to talk about there. Number 6, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the eagerly anticipated new chapter in Ubisoft's sprawling Assassin's Creed franchise, has officially gone gold, meaning core development is done and that the game has been submitted for certification and publishing. Word comes by way of the game's social media feeds, which celebrated the news. News of Valhalla's gold status comes on the back of word from Ubisoft about its plans for the game after it comes out. A post-launch roadmap has been released by the publisher, which confirmed that the game will get 2 major expansions in 2021 and that there will be a season pass. There will also be additional free seasonal support. Season 1, beginning in December, gives players new upgrades, a new settlement area, a new game mode called River Raids, new ranks, skills, abilities, weapons, gear, and more. Season 2, also free, will follow in March next year, and Season 3 will follow that. The 2 pay expansions are called Wrath of the Druids and The Siege of Paris. The former brings players to Ireland, the latter naturally to Paris. Assassin's Creed, which began back in 2007, has since become one of gaming's biggest franchises. Valhalla is the 12th entry in the core series and the first since 2018, when Assassin's Creed Odyssey launched. So, any excitement here? I don't much care about this game, but I know a lot of people do. Wanted to call it out.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's another. Not only is it. Oh man! Not only is it another game. Not only is it another Assassin's Creed game, right? But it's another game with presumably a roadmap, and I'm sure it'll be fine. It
literally has a roadmap. You can look at the roadmap on their website.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I was never really that into. Like I liked Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, and I liked the map of Assassin's Creed 3. You know, yeah. I liked moving around in colonial. You know, that was cool.
Yeah, it was dope.
But it's never been a series that I've particularly like loved. That I've been particularly interested in, even when they started shifting gears and they started making like more open world RPG type experiences. It still really wasn't really anything that I was all that interested in. So it's just, you know, it's another one. And, you know, I'm happy for the people who are, you know, into it. They got another thing to enjoy. The roadmap stuff always kind of puts me off from a lot of things. I just want something to exist and just that be it. Just once every now and again. And I know that happened with something recently. What the hell was it? That studio that put something down. They were like, that's it.
Oh, that was Star Wars Squadrons.
Yeah,
EA.
Exactly.
EA surprisingly did that.
Yeah, EA did it. And I'm like, all right, you see, I like that. There's I mean, it's an indie game, so it doesn't really count, but there's a game on PC that I've been playing, Bullets Per Minute, that rhythm.
Oh yeah, that game looks awesome.
It's so good. And I love it because I know that it's just done. You know, and I don't have to follow the game's Twitter for any updates. Even the new Doom DLC, like, you know, I'm not really that interested. Like, I'll play Doom 3 when you're ready in 4 to 5 years. Like, I don't know. Roadmaps are quickly becoming like the new open world to me, and the fact that like Assassin's Creed is both of those, it just pushes me away. Like, I don't know. I'm sure it'll be fine.
It can't do much more damage to Chris and his psyche. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla is out, I believe, on November 10th on PS4, and then it's a launch game on PS5 November 12th. And then number 7, speaking of Ubisoft, the company has finally opted to fold its largely unpopular Uplay loyalty service into something else, something called Ubisoft Connect. According to the official website for the initiative, Ubisoft Connect is the ecosystem of players, services for Ubisoft games across all platforms. It aims at giving the best environment for all players to enjoy their games and connect with each other, whatever the device, end quote. It boasts a single network for all players, thus encouraging progression and competition across platforms, and it granularly tracks your stats too. The website reads elsewhere in part, quote, "Whether you play on PC or console, you'll be part of a global network of Ubisoft players with access to all the same services," end quote. There are dedicated phone and PC apps for the service, though it's unclear what the real benefits are, apart from some leaderboards and the like. Naturally, the service will be supported by both PS4 and PS5, and you can read much more about it at ubisoftconnect.com. Don't really understand the incessant publisher obsession with getting people to sign up for these proprietary programs, although Ubisoft does seem to be a little bit ahead of the curve of trying to anticipate some sort of console-less yet PC-less future that they seem to be straddling, where maybe it's like streaming TVs or something. They've seemed to have been trying to fold their offerings into one for a long time. Mm-hmm. And this is just the next realization of it, but I'm not going to promote UbisoftConnect.com anymore, apart from letting you know it exists.
Yeah. It's not all that exciting.
No. This is more exciting. Number 8. The NPD group has, as always, released sales data for game software in the United States, this time for the month of September 2020. Game sales are up 10% year over year across all platforms, and shockingly, game hardware is up 15% year over year, even though new consoles are on the horizon. The best-selling game of the month was Crystal Dynamics' Avengers, followed by Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Madden NFL 21, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remake, and NBA 2K21. Other notable games include Star Wars Squadrons at 9, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time at 11, Ghost of Tsushima at 12, UFC 4 at 15, and Mortal Kombat 11 at 19. The best-selling game so far in all of 2020 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare, followed by Animal Crossing New Horizons at 2, and The Last of Us Part 2 at 3. Other notable games on the overall list include Ghost of Tsushima at 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake at 6, Avengers at 7. Avengers is already the 7th best-selling game of the year. And MLB The Show 20 at 9. Broken down on a SKU basis, these were the 10 best-selling games on PlayStation 4 for the month in the US. Avengers, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remake, Madden NFL 21, NBA 2K21, Ghost of Tsushima, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, Star Wars Squadrons, The Last of Us Part 2, and Minecraft. I always love these granular breakdowns because there are weird quirks, like in the overall listing for all platforms, Crash Bandicoot was outsold by Star Wars Squadrons, but Star Wars Squadrons on PlayStation 4 outsold Crash Bandicoot 4, which I always think is an interesting little piece of information if you're a nerd like I am.
Yeah.
But Chris, I wanted to ask you about this, and the reason I put this in this order, because the next story would be much higher up, if not for the order I wanted to present these stories, is what do you think of Avengers' success at number 1? And it's already, again, the 7th best-selling game of the year after only a few weeks on the market. Yeah,
no, I think it makes a ton of sense. It's Avengers. It's a super recognizable property. It's definitely a game that a lot of parents are buying for their kids. I have some nephews who I see on it, not like currently, but like I've seen them on it on occasion, and I remember they got it, and they got that over like a lot of other games that they otherwise probably they weren't going to play Last of Us. They're kids.
Right, they're children.
Yeah. So it makes a ton of sense to me that Avengers is selling really well. Like I expected that much. I'm a little more suspect of player retention. That is an area where I just don't believe that it can keep up with the amount of sales that it's gotten. But we'll see. I'm pretty sure that's already happened. But
Crystal Dynamics is already worried about this. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that Anthem was a really hot selling game in 2019.
Yeah.
As well. And don't want to. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the best selling games around the time it came out, too.
Sold a ton. I'm really happy to see Crash there, though. Makes me happy.
Yeah. It did. I mean, some people are making the good point that, and I think we might have talked about this last week, that it's a $60 game, which might be hurting it. Maybe it's a $40 sweet spot game like Ratchet was in 2016.
Yeah, I definitely think that would have been a smarter price point.
But it's an appreciable mid-tier sales success in the US and seems to be doing well in the UK and other places as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. I'm sure it'll be there next month. I really can't wait to see November's NPD, but we won't get that until December, of course, and we're not there yet. But since we're talking about Avengers, number 9, Avengers may have been last month's best-selling game, making it at the very least a short-term financial success for publisher Square Enix. But the game has still received a mediocre reception, and developer Crystal Dynamics seems poised to pump the brakes and get to work. In a very lengthy post on the game's official website, Scott Amos, Crystal Dynamics head of studio, wrote in part, quote, "Marvel's Avengers launch was not without turbulence, and we recognize that a number of issues detracted from your enjoyment of the game. This does not align with Crystal Dynamics' value of craftsmanship, and for that we sincerely apologize." End quote. So in addition to some in-game treats for loyal players available through November 5th, Amos outlined 4 places his studio is focusing: performance and stability, multiplayer and matchmaking, rewards, and late game content. And while a new patch does bring some fixes, the imminent Kate Bishop-related content has been delayed out of October, and more importantly, the native PlayStation 5 iteration of the game will no longer be available at PS5's launch and will instead come out at a yet undetermined time in 2021. Naturally, you can still play the PS4 version of the game on PS5. Crystal Dynamics' long in development and slightly tortured Avengers game finally came to PS4 in early September and has been met with a tepid critical reception, though it has clearly sold extraordinarily well. Crystal Dynamics, of course, best known for Tomb Raider. So we have some interesting information here. First of all, they're delaying the game on PS5 natively. This seems to be a pretty smart move and actually a unique opportunity that's only presented to games that come out around this time, which is that they can launch a second time and kind of get that boost for being like, oh, the game's fixed now and available for the first time on PS5, even though it's backwards compatible and all of that. So I think it's smart for them to do that if they're worried about the game's long tail. And at least 2 of these things, multiplayer and matchmaking and late game content, seem to indicate that they know that the problem is stickiness, which the game does not currently have. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problems that Avengers has are a lot more hardwired into the base design of the game. Like, it's very much an Anthem situation, except obviously Avengers has a lot more brand recognition and a lot more staying power than Anthem could ever hope to have. I do think Avengers is inherently more fun of a game just because of that. I mean, it's always going to be fun to just play as the Hulk and just hit things, because that's essentially what you would be doing with like a freaking, a toy in your bathtub when you're like 7 years old. There's just fun there that's inherent. But the problem is stickiness, and the problem is that the combat systems are just not deep enough, and it's trying to be too many things at once. It's trying to be, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but like AAA, and it's also trying to be Destiny, and it's also trying to be, this single-player narrative adventure, and it's like, you can't succeed at all of those things. It's impossible. Presumably, like, the story is really good. I haven't played, like, a lot of it. I played a little bit of it on another account, like a friend of mine's account, but so I can't speak to how good the story is, but I heard good things about the story, and maybe that's the success that it needed. Maybe that's all the success that it needed. But trying to turn this into a monetizable platform when the gameplay itself just isn't supportive of the repetition that's required for those kinds of games to succeed means that there's a whole combat problem that they have to go down back to the drawing board to address, because it's a beat 'em up. It's just mashing buttons and that's it. And you can't really make that sticky in the way that a game like Destiny is supposed to be sticky. I don't know. I just don't see this happening. I see it as more likely than Anthem, being crafted into something that becomes like a critical darling. But I still think a lot of the people that love this game love it because it's an Avengers game and are probably going to stick with it for that reason alone. And I don't know if you could really boost that with anything short of a pure like top to bottom reassessment of what the game is. That was really long-winded. I apologize.
No, it's totally fine. Please, I don't think it was long-winded at all. I think that this game took long enough, and I'll be interested to see what they think about it behind the scenes. It's hard to get a lot of candor out of these persistent game studios, which Crystal now has turned into for some reason. So I don't know that this is the best use of their time either. That's another disappointing part of it, although I know that there are multiple teams now, so this isn't all they're doing. But we'll keep an eye on the Avengers and see how that evolves. This is an interesting one. We can move through this one quick, but number 10, in an unexpected move, indie darling publisher Devolver Digital has purchased Croteam, the Croatian studio most notably behind the Serious Sam shooter franchise. The first games Devolver Digital ever published were Serious Sam games, 6 or 7 of them, in fact, before they got around to publishing Hotline Miami in 2012 and truly reaching the stratosphere of independent publishing. In fact, the two companies have shared some important founding and pioneering personnel in the past. So Croteam is now owned by Devolver, though little other information was given in Devolver's comedic press release. Devolver most recently hit pay dirt with the smash hit game Fall Guys, which they published on behalf of developer Mediatonic, and Croteam continues to work within the Serious Sam franchise as well as its puzzle series The Talos Principle, which began in 2014. Serious Sam 4, a PC and Stadia exclusive for the time being, launched in late September. Serious Sam 3 came to PS3 in 2014, and The Talos Principle came to PS4 the next year, so that was the last time we saw those guys on PlayStation, but
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting one. Are you a Serious Sam fan at all?
Oh, no. Serious Sam sucks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it either, personally.
I mean, I'm sure it was fine at a certain point, you know, but it I don't know. It seems like it's definitely one of those like kind of dumb fun kind of things where it's like, you know, oh, just run backwards and shoot hundreds of people. It's like Dynasty Warriors kind of, you know, where it's like, oh, you're just sort of destroying a bunch of like easy to kill enemies, but it's like a lot of them. So it's like apparently good. But I feel like it's just one of those games that's very, it's very of their time, you know. It seems it's a very old school shooter in like the oldest sense. It's just you're in an arena and enemies walk directly at you. Kill them.
Yeah, it's interesting. It must work for them because maybe they were had on the cheap. I can't imagine a Croatian, no offense to Croatia, but a Croatian video game studio is not going to be the same cost as if it was in like, you know, LA or something. So it might be had for the cheap. And obviously Devolver they've always done pretty well in the last 7 or 8 years, but Fall Guys has obviously been a windfall for them. So yeah, an interesting investment nonetheless. I thought the Serious Sam 4 Stadia exclusive deal from a while ago was weird, but yeah, not a franchise I care about either, but we'll keep an eye on them, see if they return to PlayStation at some point, probably with the Talos Principle 2, I would imagine they will. And finally, number 11 is a wrap-up. Chris, website Gamatsu reports simulation game Mars Horizon is coming to PS4 on November 17th. Side-scroller Cotton Reboot is coming to PS4 in the first quarter of 2021. And old-school shooter R-Type Final 2 is coming to Western PS4s in spring 2021. The website also reports Bandai Namco's popular RPG Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth has surpassed 1.5 million copies sold. Website Push Square reports that Simulator Esports Life Tycoon is coming to PS4 on November 12th. That's the same studio that made YouTuber's Life that we played, Chris, back in the day.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have more of that to look forward to. And side-scrolling RPG Monster Sanctuary is coming to PS4 on December 8th. The website also confirms that upcoming fighting game Guilty Gear Strive will have a free path for upgrade from PS4 to PS5, as will racing game Dirt 5, which was confirmed for PS5 launch on November 12th. The site also reports that My Name is Mayo 2, the sequel to the notorious Vita game from 2017, is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in the future. Eurogamer reports that board game turned video game Arkham Horror Mother's Embrace, which apparently is not a Batman game somehow, is coming to PS4 at some point next year. And finally, developer One More Level has confirmed that its upcoming game Ghost Runner will receive a free update from PS4 to PS5. Yeah, I didn't know Arkham was like a word people just used. I thought that was a word that was from Batman.
Yeah, you know? No, I that's you know, that's definitely news to me.
Yeah, I was when I saw that in the news, I actually originally took it and I was going to make it its own story because I'm like, oh, it's a Batman game, but it's not. It's not a Batman game. So it got smushed right in here to the end. And by the way, My Name is Mayo 2. I cannot believe that is actually going to happen. My Name is Mayo, for people that don't remember, is the first Vita game that was one of those games where it's like you can get this platinum trophy in 3 minutes. And it was a really controversial game, and these motherfuckers are making a sequel for it. So great.
Yeah.
All right. Chris, now we got to the drop here. This is where we usually do the drop. And we had a lot of letters about this because on Sacred Symbols Plus, we talked about how we wanted to fix and change the drop. It's a pretty divisive part of our show. Alexander Gonzalez wrote in, as many people did. He said, hey, let's move the drop to the end of the show. That way no one has to skip and you can end the show on the new games coming out. I think that's a bad idea. You want to end your shows strong, just like you want to end a concert strong. We don't want to end on a low note. So instead, what I thought we would try this week is, instead of reading the drop, all of the games are coming out, Chris and I went and looked at the games and picked out, each of us, a game that we wanted to just give a little shine to. that has recently come to PlayStation 4. And so I'll let Chris take it from here, and then we'll see how this goes. Let us know if you like this this format. So, Chris?
Yeah, so, all right. So I looked at him. I looked at everything that was available, and I kind of landed on Mushroom Heroes. Mushroom Heroes. I want to be clear when I say that. Because this game's been out for a while, but it was on other platforms, I think, prior. It's a little pixel art kind of, platformer, puzzle, kind of looks like there's a pretty big co-op focus, but I really think the pixel art on it looks like really cool, and it just looks... There aren't many pixel art games that look, really good. Pixel art's really hard to do, so anytime I see it, I'm kind of like appreciative of it. And that was out. That came out like 2 days ago, and I'm looking into it, and it seems kind of interesting. It looks like co-op focus, so I'm gonna have to get people to like play with me, but I think this is, I don't know, I like the style of this. It looks really
cool.
cute and really like well done.
Mushroom Heroes on PS4. Well, you probably don't remember, but there was a PS3 game called Mushroom Wars, which was a real-time strategy game, and it was fucking awesome.
Really?
Back in the day. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was a great game. All right, I chose the game Outpost Delta, which came to PS4, and it also came to PC, I think, at the same time. This is by a studio called Hidden Achievement, who actually did this weird... I was looking into them. They did what they call what they term a cooperative card game, which is called the Dresden Files, and they released, I guess, several of those. This is the first time I think they've appeared on PlayStation, however. And this game is basically a side-scrolling, pixel-based Metroidvania 2D side-scrolling kind of sci-fi game. And it looks really good. I highly suggest people go check out the trailer for it. There are a lot of games like this. I don't know if it's going to blow you away. It's a little bit of a underwhelming week on PlayStation Network, even though there's a high volume of games. But this Outpost Delta game actually looks pretty legit. And it is a little expensive at $24.99. I was a little surprised, too, at that price point that it doesn't have a platinum trophy, which is really shocking. But I am seeing that some people in the... on Steam, you have a little more control when you're a publisher and developer, and you can kind of put your own pull quotes in from other reviews. And people are talking about how this is kind of like Metroid Fusion, which is high praise. I don't know if that's true. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. But I wanted to give a little bit of shine this week to Outpost Delta. All right. I think that's a lot better doing it that way.
Yeah. It's definitely less... painful.
Reading. Yes. So let us know what you think of that. And then we will end, of course, as we always do, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over at Patreon, patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. Thank you so much for your kindness, generosity, and support. Ben Sender wrote into us and said, and this is an interesting question. He says, do you think the attach rate, he calls it the attachment rate, but it is the attach rate, of Sony first-party games will increase or decrease in the PS5 generation? Of course, I hope it increases, but with the popularity of persistent games in the industry, I can't help but feel like attach rate overall is going to drop down. So attach rate is just industry jargon for how many games are sold on average per console. And so the easy mathematical equation is Sony tells you X amount of consoles have been sold and Y amount of software have been sold, and you just divide those together. And so you get a number like 11.3. And that just means that on average, each PS4 has sold 11.3 games on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the attach rate has been rising this generation. It's higher than it's ever been, largely because of the digital ecosystem, Steam-like sales, and ubiquitous access to a lot of these titles. All of them actually on PS4 can be bought digitally. And of course, for the greater strata between free games all the way up to $60 games. So I think that contributes to it. But Chris, Ben makes a good point here, and I'm interested what you think about persistent games kind of nibbling into this attach rate. We won't know the answer until the end of the PS5 generation, which is not going to be for 6, 7, or 8 years. But I would assume he's right that persistent games will cause attach rate to decrease.
I don't think so. I think I think persistent games have their niche, and I think they have their player bases, and eventually they move. When you get sick of a persistent game, typically you either put it down and play something else, or you move to a different persistent game, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you stop playing other games. I think, I'm probably going to be playing Destiny 2 as like my main persistent game, but it's not going to prevent me from playing Miles Morales when it comes out, or God of War, or, The Last of Us, the Fast of Us kart racer, whenever that releases inevitably. I think persistent games largely compete in their own space, and I don't see I don't see people being like, oh, I'm going to skip out on, the new God of War because, the Division 2 has an update. Like, I don't see that happening. What I think is more likely is that Anthem will try to relaunch and people will be like, why do I need another one of these? We already have a George.
Right.
As
it's a constant problem of always having a George. It's always a problem.
We've said this constantly because it's just true. It's a fact.
No, it's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Seinfeld's law. We already have. We already have a George, and
I like that a lot.
But you don't always have a Kratos.
Oh, very well put. It would be more Elaine's law, I think, because Elaine's the one that says it. So we'll call it Elaine's law.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I like that. We'll call it Elaine's law. I like that a lot. Yeah, and I think we've kind of stemmed the race to the bottom that was happening in the console space for a while. Not in volume of games being released, but in how games are selling. Like, I don't think low tier games are selling very well on PS because they're not unique anymore on PS4. So I don't think people are racing to spend little bits of money on lots of games. If they're going to do that, they're going to do that in MMOs and free to play games and all of that. But the balance will come in what the $10, $15, $20 games and how that will balance things out, especially because game prices will be going up, which is something that Ben hadn't brought up either, which might affect overall attach rate because most people still buy their games boxed. That most people are not going to play anything digitally really in the indie space. So we can't count too much on them, but yeah, we'll see, Ben. Unfortunately, we won't have the stats until later on, and the show probably won't exist, and Earth might not even exist by the time the PS5 ends.
Yeah.
Daniel Pressure wrote into us and said, hey, CNC, what do you think about Sony's game help feature on the PS5 hurting content creators out there like PowerPix and others that make tons of content for trophy help and walkthroughs? Thanks for all the great content. Cobra out. I couldn't help but think about this immediately, especially my friend PlayStation 5 trophies. And others, of course. I don't want to just call out anyone. PowerPix, of course, is like a conglomerate of people. I remember I thought PowerPix was one person, and I was like, how is this possible? really a senior moment for me. But I did think about this when I saw how Sony is baking in some game help stuff and trophy help. But again, I don't think other developers are really going to use this. We talked about this a little bit last week. It's just more work they have to do. It might be compelling. What would be interesting is if some of these developers actually hired some of these guys to do that stuff for them, which I think would be an awesome opportunity for them for both sides. But I don't think it's going to be used to the extent that it's going to affect anyone. And if it does, that's kind of the market demanding a different solution. I think like picture in picture with YouTube would be more ideal and more allow you the ability to see basically anything you want. I've been experiencing that a little bit in playing G.I. Joe, where I'm using my phone to find the collectibles and then I'm looking up on my screen. It would be cool to have a little bit more of a elegant solution to that. But I must say this might eat into the game help sphere a little bit. Have you thought about that? And do you think it's something that's actually going to happen?
I don't think this is going to happen at all. I think game help is going to die like immediately. For a multitude of reasons. I think developers putting in that extra time is just a lot of time that a lot of developers are going to be like, why would we do this? There's already content creators. There are already content creators making this stuff. This is not we're not designing games anymore at this point. So let's just focus on the freaking game. But I think the biggest thing is that the idea of having all of your solutions to any given problem in one device is kind of nice on paper, and I think they work well for phones because they're so portable. But the reason that game help isn't going to be popular on PlayStation 5 and the reason why it's just not going to work is for the same reason that picture-in-picture on Xbox One didn't work. It's going to be for the same reason that, plugging your iPod into your Xbox One or your PS4 doesn't work the same way as it did when your 360 and PS3 were like capable of doing it. It's because we just have better ways of doing that now. Like, it's just infinitely more convenient and infinitely more intuitive to just look up something, to look up help on your phone or on your laptop with a full keyboard or with a device that you are like really good at using than it is to like relearn how to use a console and like have this weird arbitrary like picture in picture like sidebar like pop up in the middle of your game and just this ugly user interface popping up and then having to squint at whatever the hell the video is and alt tab on a controller like between the two. Like, it's just we have better ways of doing this now. Like it's just so much easier and so much faster to just look something up on a laptop or your phone than it would be to just use this weird feature. And even beyond that, I just don't see it being all that interesting to use. You know, like I don't see why. This was the part of the presentation that I found really annoying, because, oh, hey, this hidden collectible, let's just like have a button that shows you how to get this hidden collectible on the console. And it's like, no, then it's not hidden, is it? Like I feel like the whole point of this stuff being kind of extraneous to the console, I feel like that's kind of the point, because if you really want to spoil that for yourself, you're going to have to go out of your way to do it. You're going to have to, all right, well, let me just go on YouTube and look through hours of content, or like maybe like find somebody that I trust to get guides on how to do this. I feel like that's a lot more of an appealing solution than just awkwardly snapping some picture-in-picture thing. Because a thing that a lot of people maybe don't remember about Xbox One when it launched was that this idea that like, oh, you could have Netflix running in the corner and you could like watch TV while you play Watch Dogs. Isn't that cool? And I remember seeing that and thinking like, oh yeah, that is kind of neat. And then I tried it, and then I realized if I was ever to do something as psychopathic as this, I would just have it running on my laptop or my phone while I played, because it shrinks the screen. It's awkward. It's more intrusive than I think people think it is, like in concept. And I just feel like I feel like this is down that same road where it's like, this is a neat feature in the moment, but I don't see it getting a lot of use. I see it being very intrusive. I see it being very ugly. I see it being very hard to navigate with a controller. I really don't see it with this. This is not a threat to anyone.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, too, that it is a why buy the cow when you get the milk for free situation. And you pointed it out. Why invest any amount of effort into that when no one has ever bought a game because they're like, oh, the cheats will be built into the game. I mean, maybe that's nice in Grand Theft Auto or something when you beat it, but it is a little weird. I found that a little strange, too, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. I don't think PowerPix and those guys, PS5 trophies and the others, have much to worry about, but we'll see what happens there. Justin wrote into us and said, hey, Real American Colin and Cobra Commander Chris, I know this topic has been covered ad nauseum, but I was curious if in-game advertisements like the unskippable NBA 2K ads and microtransactions help offset the ever-increasing costs in game development. While I think we can all agree that games are the cheapest they've ever been and development costs continue to rise, do aggressive ads and in-game purchases help offset this gap? Perhaps even go above and beyond making up for, let's say, a $10 increase in MSRP. Curious what you think. Thanks for all that you do. So this is a topic of conversation right now because in NBA 2K21, there are unskippable ads in a $60 game and what will be a $70 game on PS5. And I find that intolerable. I'm not usually one of these people that gets on my high horse about this stuff. I think a lot of anti-consumer stuff is not really as anti-consumer as people make it seem. But this is one of those things where I'm like, I did pay. It's like how I feel when I go to a movie and I pay $15 for the movie and then there's like 17 ads in the beginning. I'm like, this kind of sucks. Now, I know people make the argument that, well, you pay for your TV and then you watch TV commercials. Yeah, I know, but it's just kind of, we should have different expectations on different mediums. And this isn't my expectation on video games. $70 or $60 or $70 investment should at the very least get you no advertisements. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah, that's why you pay for premium services. That's why you pay for like Hulu Plus, you know, so you don't have to deal with that shit.
Dude, I know also that especially in FIFA and in NBA 2K, when they have those borders on the sides of the pitch in soccer and on the court in basketball, that in real life constantly rotate in and out ads. And I know how tempting that is for publishers like EA and 2K, Take-Two to take advantage of this. But you kind of got to just like, you can have it one way or you can have it the other. Or you can have like a mid-tier game that's $30 or $40 and then supported with ad revenue. But I think it sucks. Yeah, I do. I think it sucks.
I agree. I think... I do think, though, with those sports things, with like rotating the ads out of the borders, I actually don't mind that too much. Like the whole like, oh, you know, like here's a real brand on like the corner of, you know, a soccer, you know, a soccer field or whatever the fuck. I don't know how they advertise these things.
Pitch.
Yeah. I don't mind that really, because I feel like it's a little bit more jarring whenever I'm playing a game and it's supposed to have like, you know, when you're playing like Grand Theft Auto and you see like ads and it's like kind of there. I mean, it's obviously satire and it's obviously like making fun of other, you know, real companies, but there's something that kind of always pulls me out a little bit. I feel like you can actually kind of use those smartly in a way that actually kind of adds to whatever the hell you're making. That's a good pun.
Yeah.
But typically, unskippable ads. I mean, every ad is skippable. Like when you go to a movie, you know, and you buy the ticket, you know exactly like, okay, so the start time for the movie is 20 minutes after the start time on the ticket. You know, so you know when to get there to avoid seeing them. And like TV is like, yeah, you can get up, you can do all sorts of things to skip those ads. But if it's an unskippable thing in a video game, the thing that you are participating in, you know, it's like, that's pretty egregious. I agree with you. I think 30, if you want to have ads in like a $30 game, I guess have at it. It's not nearly as annoying, but $60 for ads is insane.
Yeah, it's frustrating. They just cannot resist. So, well, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that develops. I know the NBA 2K audience is up in arms about that, so certainly we'll have more to say about that in the future. Devin McCarty wrote into us and said, to the tripod, how much grace should be given to developers working throughout this pandemic? A lot of us were affected in one way or another, either having to work remotely or get laid off altogether. But when it comes to delays in content releases, the entire gaming community couldn't give a fuck about what is happening at all and demands all production companies operate as if nothing has changed. As a consumer, it makes sense. The products you pay for should be complete and delivered on time. However, I can't shake the notion that people should just calm down a little when it comes to the kind of delays we're seeing with gaming DLC drops or full releases altogether. They're people just like us, only working in the type of jobs most of us would dream of. Would be cool for the gaming community to chill the fuck out a bit. I wanted to read this one aloud, Chris. I'm wondering what your thoughts are, just because I feel like this is advice for everyone generally this year, is to just be, if you can, like a little more patient, a little more kind. If you're like at a 7 of kindness, maybe you want to put it up to like an 8 this year, or like your patience level, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
I do talk a lot about how game developers don't have the kind of job, frankly, that is as soul sucking as I'm sure a lot of jobs people work out there. And I try to keep that balance. But I think generally anyone that's putting in extra time and is dealing with the challenges our society is presenting us today and our economy is presenting us in terms of parenthood and jobs and all of that, it's really tough. So I just think, to Devin's point, everyone should just chill out on everyone else. This should be a year of kindness and patience.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that entirely. I think, although I would say that I think this year is a little bit more calm as far as that goes. Like I think the delays that we've seen, I feel like most people kind of understand, because it's such a ubiquitous situation that everybody kind of understands the repercussions of, and kind of everybody is dealing with in some way. So I feel like people in general are a lot more understanding of these kinds of delays, especially in the software space. I haven't seen personally as much vitriol behind a lot of delays as I have in previous years.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I think that, yeah, people have been a little more patient than I think Devin's letting on as well.
Yeah, so while I would echo Devin's sentiment, I would also say, you know, give credit where credit is due. I think we're doing a little better. As crazy as the world is in general, and how as crazy as people seem to be, I feel like, you know, people are doing okay on that front at the very least.
All right, let's do 2 more. Jet Hambo wrote in and said, "Hey gamers, my question is nice and simple. What the fuck is up with this whole Bugsnax game? It dawned on me that this is part of the PS5 launch lineup of games, yet I have not heard nor seen a single thing about this game since its reveal this summer. I want to know what your guys' thoughts on this game are, and why the hell Sony felt it was necessary to show this game off during the summer event and have it as a console exclusive. This game definitely feels like a forced meme and hopes to boost sales, but I really don't think it will work out at all. Thanks, boys, and keep on snacking." So, the reason I think that they wanted to work with these guys, again, the studio is called Young Horses, is because it worked out fairly well for both sides the first time they worked together, which was when PS4 was being announced, and PS4 was in its early days, in its first few months, and a game called Octodad came to PS4 after PC. It came out a couple months later in April of 2014. Now, I have been on the record many times as thinking I don't think Octodad Dadliest Catch is a good game. I think it's funny, and I think it's really fun for about 5 minutes, and then it becomes really obnoxious. And that's always been my opinion on that game. But it's funny that Jet Hambo here in his question says it feels like a forced meme, because I think Octodad in itself was also a meme. And so I think the two sides are probably trying to achieve that again. Octodad was a huge hit by the beginning of 2015, according to its Wikipedia page. It had already sold like 500,000 copies. So, and of course it came to PS Vita in 2015, and then it was ported elsewhere, Nintendo and Xbox and all the rest. Now, Bugsnax itself, Chris, and I don't know how much you know about it, but it's basically a game where you are trying to catch these little creatures, and that's it. I mean, that's basically how I remember it. It's supposed to be just a kind of a cutesy game where you're collecting these various species of bugs.
Yeah, and then you eat them.
I think it's supposed to be kind of an easy, chill game. I don't think it's supposed to be anything crazy.
Well, I don't know. It seems like it's because isn't there the whole thing where like if you eat a bug, you become a snack? That's like a thing, right? Like where like I remember people's arms becoming like strawberries after they ate like a moth or so. I don't know. Like it seems like something that is so. It seems like a game that Sony is kind of hoping will just be one of these things where people see and they go like, "What is that?" And they just sort of check it out of sheer curiosity. I personally think Octodad, Dadliest Catch had a little bit more of had more staying power than this. I feel like, or not staying power, but more intrigue than this, because Octodad looked hilarious, you know, but like this just looks kind of like LOL XD so random, you know, like that kind of like 2007 internet chat room like AIM humor. I don't really know what the hell's going on. They had that one trailer too where it seemed to hint at like a greater narrative happening, where it like ended on like a almost like a horror note. So I really don't know what the hell they're doing with this, but it seems I don't know, like it could work. You can never predict shit like this. This is such a bizarre game coming out in such a bizarre time that like I really don't think anybody could really predict what the hell the world has in store for this thing. But I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on it, because I'm just curious as to what the hell the thing is. And while Octodad wasn't great, I still maintain that Dadliest Catch is such a great name that
it is. It's totally a great name. I just hated playing it.
No,
I really did.
I totally understand. It reminded me of like there's this other game on PC similar called I Am Bread. Do you remember?
I remember
it?
that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
it was like that. Where it's like there are all these weird meme games that were coming out where it's like, isn't it fun that it's impossible to control?
Yeah, and that was like, just. I remember. Yeah, I hated it. Oh my god! I remember being like, no, it's not. It's not fun at all.
It started with QWOP, I think, on like addictinggames.com or something. It was
that's not even my scene.
Yeah, this really crude game where you had to make a runner run to like do like a 100-yard dash or something, but like you could only use the QWOP keys on a keyboard. It was terrible.
All right, we have a similar question here to wrap things up from Joseph Jewell, who said, "Hi, CNC. With all of the talk about upcoming PS5 launch titles, one game that I haven't heard mentioned by many is the Pathless, which is being developed by Giant Squid. I was wondering if either of you have seen any gameplay of this, as it looks quite interesting and appears to be something quite unique and different. Thank you all for the quality content as always. Your podcast is always one of the things that I look forward to each week. Thanks again from the Black Country in rainy England." I hope I didn't say something racist just now. All right, Joseph, talk a little bit about the Pathless. So you said it's by Giant Squid. That is true. Giant Squid, of course, is the studio that released one other game previously. It's called Abzu. Did you play that game by chance?
Abzu? No, I saw it a lot, but like I don't know. I never.
It was like a weird underwater game. It was kind of like Underwater Journey. It was. I didn't really. Journey is like one of the great games of the PS3 era. I don't think that this game was like that, but this new game, the Pathless, is very different. You basically play as an archer, and you have like this pet eagle, and it looks like an action RPG. It kind of reminds me. It's not quite the same in many ways, but it reminds me a little bit of Zelda, actually.
Yeah, no, it totally looks Breath of the Wild-y.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was intrigued by in reading about it a little bit in preparation for the show was there's no quick travel in the game, which I'm really intrigued by. I want to see how that all works out. It looks pretty cool. it is getting lost amongst the clutter. But I will say that for a game that no one's really talking too much about, it has the PlayStation walkthrough. So not even the announced trailer has like 700 and some odd thousand views. It's not too bad. So it is going to get lost though behind Demon's Souls and Miles Morales and stuff. I imagine this is going to be a game for me that I'll play probably third, fourth, or fifth after I play Sackboy, and obviously I'm going to start with Miles Morales and all of that. But yeah, I wanted to acknowledge the Pathless. We haven't talked about it, and it does look really good. So
yeah,
so go check it out. All right, Chris, that's all we have for this week of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Do you have any closing comments?
I don't know. I guess we're approaching, huh? Like how many more? We don't have that much more time before this.
Yeah, let me pull up a calendar. So we have an episode 1, 2. So there are only 2 episodes between now, 2 more episodes after this one between now and when the console launches. The console launches on a Thursday, which is when we usually record. So we should be in great shape for that weekend to have a really great podcast too, which is awesome. So yeah, we are close at hand.
Yes.
And it's very exciting indeed. So thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of our show. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols, and of course on Patreon as well. Till next time, goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Casual Misfits Gaming, Nick DeMarco, Constantine Valencia, an unofficial controller podcast, Andrew Morgan, Gregory Slavinsky, Stephen Nieder, Ross Marenka, Zach Parsley, Miguel A. Brewer, Morgan Ashley, Ben, Azan, Isaac Wasterman, Michael Vecchio, Brienne, Joey Finelli, Jerome Ferreira, SL the FMA, Ryan T. Mandel, Jorge Palomino, Paul Joyce, Enrique Perez, Don Lee, Daniel Diamore, Brad Cooley, Jeremy Key, Patrick Leslie, Homeworld Hub, 3dprintshop.com, Chris Buston, Nick Thornton, Betty Ann Moriarty, Colin Jewell, Nelson LeBlanc, Daniel Johnson, Zach Bonham, Jay Getter, Terrell Parson, Vexius, Jeff Mercado, Galja, Darren Gardner, Of Fortuna, Boots, Megadet, Sal Balcazar, Raul Melendez, Bloody Fang, Eric Harden, Matt Martin, Rodney Coleman, Chris Moore, TB Lightning, Auntie Kinnanen, Taylor Barkley, Chris Galvin, Ryan Murdoch, Mason Cadillac, Ollie Fritz, Chris Buston, George Anthony Nunez, Kyle Hagel, Colin Love, Daryl E. Naiman, Ryan R. Kittredge, Toby Ryland, Michael S., Damon Weathers, Carl Tolman, Richter86, Barrett Boswell, Christopher DeVio, Kevin Komaki, Blake Israel, Sean Mason, Josh Gravelick, Brian Chan, Connor Gashian, Organic Produce, Mubarak, Carlos Algarit, McDog18, Richard Hebert III, Miranda Grubba, Ray Leja, David Castanez, Donnie Nolan, Josh Yeager, Toothless Gibbon, Martin Beck, Gavin, Nathan R., Joe McPartland, Sci-Fi Book Club, Lawrence F. Prokop, Colin Davenport, Eric Finkenbeiner, Lou and Ray Loper, Dylan Burns, John Scholz, David Chestnut, Yusuf, Anton K., Alan Trembley, Tyler Bello, Tony Zaniga, Sean Battershaw, Robbie Hensley, Alex Cabrera, Lennon Brixey, Corey Wyatt, James Kinslow III, Hugo's Desk, Peter Reynolds, William O'Carroll, JSC0828, Jesper Jansen, Phil Crone, Throw 7, Mike Wayne, Adam Nix, Josh McKinney, Jesse Owens, Michael Gates, Alex Gates, Sean Chandler, Petro Roge, Gio Corsi, Greg Lotta, Gerald Pennington, Justin Wagaman, Chad Lewis, Todd Paxton, Joshua Smallwood, Shane Rayum, Spencer Brand, John Cordero, Greg Juliffs, Mark Boggio, Keith A. Lewis, Marius Peterson, Tyler Harris, Matthew Purdue, Toby Shootman, Patrick Carper, Mad Mock Media, and Jonathan Rice.